Join us every Friday for encouragement, freedom, and biblical truth. Grab your coffee or grab your tea. It's going to be a good one. All right. Hey, everyone. Kim here. And it looks like I'm live everywhere, so that is good. I have my volume off on Rumble and also Facebook and now YouTube. This is totally new for me this week. So I do see some comments here. So really quick, I'm going to say some hellos to everyone who are here. I've got Carl in our fancy non-green room, but we'll call it a green room. And so hello, Carol. B. Halcom, thank you so much. We've got Tsunami is in the house. Nancy and Just Vicky. So Meg. All right, guys. So this right here is going to be a podcast that I'm excited about personally, because for those who have been following me for any length of time, you guys know that the new age, UFO, alien, this spiritual deception is definitely, I want to say, in my wheelhouse, because I do have an expert on here today. But I want to introduce and I want to just give a brief introduction here. Carl Tykrib is going to come on here today, and I'm going to read literally from online word for word so we can know who he is, because he has experience and he's got, oh my gosh, and he just came, if I'm not mistaken, from the Burning Man. So he definitely has his finger on the pulse of what's happening. So Carl is a Canadian-based researcher, writer, and lecturer focusing on the paradigm shift sweeping the Western world, including the challenges and opportunities faced by Christians. Over the years, he has attended a range of internationally significant political, religious, and social events. I couldn't speak social events in his quest to understand the historical and contemporary forces of transformation, including the 2015 and 2018 Parliament of the World's Religions, Burning Man, and the United Nations Millennium Forum. So again, I am so excited that he is here. What I would love for you guys to do before we bring him on is give a thumbs up if sound. There is going to be a huge delay on Rumble and Facebook. YouTube should run pretty decent, so be mindful of that. There's going to be a huge delay. Sandra, even though it's my name, that's her. She is my admin here on StreamYard. So guys, I'm so glad we are here. I'm hoping with everyone coming in on both Rumble, Facebook, and YouTube, we are going to learn a lot here tonight from Carl. And I told him before we came on, I'm trying not to say his name in New York, because I would be like, hey, Carl, what's up, Carl? But I don't want to sound like I'm from Brooklyn, yo. So I just got to be Carl. You know what it reminds me of? Sorry, I know we're all waiting. The Walking Dead. Yes, I know. I've watched those episodes. But when Andrew, the actor, said Carl in there because he's British, it would always come out and he's trying to sound Southern. So anyway, what I want to do is I want to bring on Carl Tykrib here today. And I do want to set something up though for him here. So let's go ahead and we'll bring him on. It'd be nice if I played it right. Right. Hello, hello. How are you, Carl?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. Excited to be a part of your part of your evening.
Yes, part of my very first time using StreamYard.
It'll be good.
I hope so. We're gonna find out. But I really, honestly, I'm so glad you're here. When the Lord led me to do life clips, I started with kind of helping Christians journey through some sin issues that the church doesn't ever want to broach, right? Those topics of, oh, I had an abortion. Can I still be saved? Or, I struggle with this and just those big topics. And then when 2020 hit, um, not that I woke up because I was always been part of, not personally, but the new age spirituality deception. And I think everyone just seemed to be so focused on the new world order, the second half of the tribulation. I think we're not focused in on this false light that is so prevalent, if not more today than I think it's been in the past 30 years. I mean, I know it's always been there, but so I'm excited. Your book, so guys, please, again, the link is in the show notes. It'll be here in the comments. The book is it's a lot. I mean, it is a lot to take in, not in a bad way, because you do. I was going to read this here, but it is broken up in 5 parts, and I know that you can explain that a lot better than I can. Um, but it really brings in, like, I felt myself just stuck in a chapter with my jaw on the ground because there were just so many things that I did not even know. And so I appreciate you. Definitely, you put a lot of hard work into that. And so, anyway, just give us a brief overview of what the book entails in those 5 parts. I mean, you can read that instead of me. You're the author.
Well, no problem. Um, the book is I broke the book up into 5 parts because I wanted to be able to have kind of an overview where the reader can jump into it wherever he or she may feel that it's the most appropriate. You don't have to read it chronologically. But each part builds on the next. Each part adds more information to the next. The first part is just 2 chapters. All it is an opening, an introduction, kind of allowing the reader to land on the idea of oneness, what that entails, how it's lived out. And I take them to the very first globally important event I had attended, and that was back in 1997, the Global Citizenship 2000 Youth Congress. And it was an event meant to reshape my country's education system to better reflect United Nations ideals and some of the spirituality that surrounds the idea of one world. And so that becomes kind of like the launching pad for this idea of what oneness looks like. Part two is a multi-chapter section that goes through a time period. It takes us from basically um, the Reformation era, the Age of Enlightenment, and demonstrates those shifts that have happened in intellectual, religious, social movements, all the way up to the time period we're at today, which I label as reenchantment. That's not my label, it's others, but I label it as reenchantment. Demonstrating both modernity, the sense of all we have is materialism, we live in a naturalistic world, to really a full shift back around to a pagan mindset, a pagan worldview that says ultimately God, man, and nature are essentially the same. We're all one. And then the third part is actually a conclusion of sorts. It's a conclusion right in the middle of the book, and it juxtaposes the biblical worldview against more or less this massive amount of data that has led up to this point, and demonstrates that there is nothing new under the sun. This is really just Genesis 3 being lived out in different ways.
Mm.
And it's the wrestle that man has always had since our fall, to say that we are as gods, we will be our own masters of meaning and destiny, and we will build heaven on earth. And really, that is the story of mankind. That's a story of our rebellion. And what is really kind of fundamental to that rebellion is there's a principle, and the principle is this: if you transcend God's laws, if you break God's laws, you will transform. And so that, in essence, is kind of what I have demonstrated in those preceding chapters. Part 4 is a 4-chapter section that is more or less a case study in 4 specific areas, demonstrating how this idea of oneness, collectivism, our search for meaning and purpose in the we and the collective, how that is played out, how it's played out politically within the realm of global governance, and then as we tackle interfaithism, how the religious component comes into play. And then transhumanism. I was one of the early Christian researchers in the transhumanist movement, and so that chapter alone offers material that is hard to find elsewhere, just simply because of the places I've been.
Hmm.
And then the last chapter in that section is on transformational culture, evolutionary culture, things like Burning Man, and similar social, spiritual, cultural movements. And then the very last section is 1 chapter, and it's just kind of like a wrap up. It's like, here you go. Now you have that information. Now that you have been swamped with like over 500 pages of data, you figure out the application.
Hmm.
You now tailor it to your own life, and you become an ambassador for Christ. You become a truth teller in this age of lies and confusion. That's more or
Amen.
less the breakdown. And to your point about, in the introduction, you said it was at Burning Man recently. Yes, but allow me to please clarify that I didn't go to the big burn back in last year, back in August and September, because I still wasn't able to travel across the border into your country.
Hmm.
And I'm waiting for your president to clear that up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
I know.
funny.
Exactly. But last weekend was a a virtual burn, basically in the metaverse. And so, the whole goggles, and inside you go and
Yeah.
interact and correspond and have some fantastic conversations, just
Hmm.
fantastic conversations, and made some great connections. In fact, there's one gentleman I'm gifting a copy of my book to. He's
Wow.
not a Christian at all. He's looking for
Yeah.
spirituality in every way, shape, and
Mm.
form. And that's one beautiful thing about the Burning Man community. It's a gifting economy. So it's like, hey, I've
Hmm.
got a gift for you.
Yeah.
And they're like, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Here you go.
No. Yeah. That's good. Seed planting,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
And that's the sad thing, I think, when people are on that spiritual journey, because God has put eternity on our hearts. He's etched that. Like, we're through creation alone, we'll know there's a God. However, we know within ourselves that we're lacking something, and that's the reason that everyone's seeking, spiritualism. But you were right about Burning Man. I did research on them a couple of years ago, maybe 3. No, because COVID was 2020, so it had been before then. And I did a deep dive, and this is even before I started the podcast. And to your point, yes, they are very big gifters. I'll just say that, the community. But so let me ask you, and this hasn't, it's not even in my show notes, but you had mentioned it. And then I realized I forgot to introduce my mug. So guys, I'll do that, I promise. But because it's a pretty mug this week. So but do you witness to people when you're there, or do you kind of, well, so what kind of role do you take when you're in those situations? Because I find what you do fascinating. I would love to do something like that, but my personality is like, hey, let's. Yeah, I would like. I don't know what I would do, but so what do you do when you're there?
Okay. Because I go to so many different kinds of places that all more or less interlock, at least in their worldview. When it comes to events like Burning Man, we set up a camp, and our camp is called the Camp of the Unknown God. And we have a sign that says Camp of the Unknown
Mm.
God, based out of Acts 17. Okay. And so people will
Yeah.
come by, and I mean, this happens. People will literally shout out, "Who is this unknown God?" Well, that's an open door. I mean, that's as open door
Mm.
as you can get. Or when we're out and about in the city, Black Rock City, people always ask, "What camp are you from?" That's the norm. And so everybody
Mm.
says, "Hey, I'm from Camp Mystic, or I'm from Playa Alchemist," or whatever the camps are. And we're like, "We're from the Camp of the Unknown God," and that immediately raises questions, and that offers those opportunities for conversations for Jesus Christ. And we've had a lot of that, a lot. I mean, it takes a little while to kind of get a feel for the place.
Mhm.
Um, but I mean, and for myself, I'll just be upfront. I'm going in as a researcher. That's kind of first and
Correct.
foremost what I do.
Mhm.
But we've set our camp up specifically so that those kinds of conversations do happen. And
Yeah.
that's actually one of the points of going, besides the research angle.
Mhm.
Attending the Parliament of World Religions, again, I'm going in as a researcher, but we have others who are part of There's actually a small group of Christians who go in. We pretty much all know each other. Um, and what's great, we have people who have a real gifting in terms of just being able to have those conversations freely and openly. I kind of stumble around a bit. Um, I'm there more or less, again, going for the research, but you end up having these conversations. It's
Yeah.
inevitable. I remember sitting down and having a conversation with a Wiccan priest over a meal at the Parliament, and he asked me what
Mm.
religion I was, and I said, "Well, I'm Christian."
Wow.
He's like, "Which denomination?" And he had Reverend so and so on the side of his, and that's
Mhm.
how his title was framed. And I'm like, "Oh, what are you from?" And I'm Wicca. I'm a Wicca priest. Okay, fantastic. We're gonna have a great conversation, and we did, really, really good conversation. Um,
Mm.
and so you take those doors as they come. Probably
Amen.
one of the more exciting ones was I was at Paganicon, which is the U.S. Midwest largest indoor pagan convention or conference, about 800 or so witches. And I had this guy hit on me. That's just how that world works. And you diffuse a situation because you do, right? You diffuse
Mhm.
it. And then I
Mhm.
said, hey, let's sit down for a coffee. We had a
Yeah.
conversation for 2 hours. He asked me right away
Mm.
what pagan tradition I was following. And I said, I'm not.
Right.
I'm a Christian. And he's like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I'm here to learn. And
Yeah.
that's how you couch it. I'm here to
Mm.
learn. And then we ended up having a conversation where we juxtaposed his
Mhm.
oneism with the biblical view of twoism. And
Mhm.
I credit Dr. Peter Jones for working through that hermeneutic, but it's a great tool, a great model. The biblical position is not dualism, where there's an equal good and an equal bad, an equal black and an equal white, and this type of thing, where Satan is, the negation of God. Or no, it's not that. It's it's twoism. God is
Mhm.
separate, distinct, completely unique, and then creation.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
those are the kinds of conversations that you will have,
Mhm.
but you got to be able to step into their circle,
Yeah.
into their world. I'm going there as a researcher
Mhm.
first,
Correct.
and they'll allow it to happen as it does happen.
Mhm. And that's true because a lot of people who know my backstory, I was in the LGBTQ community for many, many years. So God has opened that door for me. Not that I would go to a gay club or bar by any means, but to your point, there's a certain way I think to handle. Um, I don't know how to phrase this, but it's not like they're just a normal person walking around and you just run into them at Starbucks. These people are riddled into, I want to say the world of demons and darkness because they're tapping into realms that normal people just don't always do. So you have to approach both groups, I think, with a different approach than you would say, again, a plain Jane on the street corner. So I appreciate that. Um, So what I want to do, and I'm not going to play my little intro. Sorry, guys. I totally forgot this mug, but I really felt it was fitting for this week because we all know the scripture verse, and I just thought that sometimes, when we're dealing with spirituality, there's only one person we need to rely on, and that's Jesus. So basically, this mug this week says, trust in the Lord. And then on the back end is with all of your heart. This is a Ray Dunn mug that I got on sale at Amazon. So I can't beat a deal. But I loved it and I thought it was very fitting. Sorry, there was no 20-second intro. I got a little nervous with you, Carl, in the beginning. I never get nervous with people. But I was a little flustered in the beginning, guys. I was like, oh my gosh, I just got to start and I got to put on my readers. And so I apologize. I mean, I was a little out of sync there.
It's a new platform for you.
It is. Everything is a little new for me tonight. Absolutely. So, okay, I want to start at chapter 1 in the beginning with oneness because you had mentioned, which I did not know this, Oprah and Eckhart, their program New Earth, the 10th largest spiritual gathering. So, just briefly, can you talk about that just for a little bit? About why do you think it just blew up so
Mm.
quickly the way that it did?
Oh, there's a hunger. There's an absolute hunger for something spiritual, and this is one of the you could almost look at it as a reaction against modernity, materialism.
Mm,
People are tired of just things, or even considering themselves to be nothing more than just the clash of accidental atoms. You're looking for something meaningful. You're looking for something authentic, something that still fills you with wonder.
mm,
And so there is this hunger for some type of spirituality, not religion, not theology, not
yeah,
dogma, something that you can feel. And so there's this quest, and Oprah really tapped into that in a remarkable way.
sure.
Uh, Oprah's audience is primarily female,
Mhm,
and the female gender is more in tune or intuitive in terms of feeling. That is typically the case. Men, for whatever reason, we shut those things down, or we try to, because we're men. Um, you know, but so there was a hunger, an audience that was hungry for that, and it's really been hungry since, boy, really the late 1960s, early 1970s, and that hunger's been growing. And
mhm,
and ironically, as that hunger has been growing over the last 50 years, unfortunately, the church doesn't quite know how to
yeah.
answer that.
Mm,
And so the world is looking, and the world will then look especially to the east. And Oprah was giving us what Western culture wanted to hear, which
mhm,
was a westernized form of Eastern spirituality, just repackaged for, almost a consumerist, longing, hopeful type of audience. We
mhm,
we wanted to buy it.
yeah.
We wanted to have, packaged and sold to us
Mhm,
as we looked for some type of meaning, purpose, and hope. Um,
yeah.
and so I look at that as it's a challenge, but it's also that opportunity to have those conversations, right?
Mhm, for sure. Yeah, Oprah really, she tapped into the new age
Big time.
big time.
Yep.
I remember, I'm sure you saw that clip a long time ago. So, when Oprah was saying that there is many paths, remember she had that dialogue with that woman in the audience? I don't know if that woman's living today, but I'm just saying, man, she's got a crown waiting for her in heaven because she stood up. Like Oprah, even at that point, was so uber popular, and for her to be that bold in the midst of, she just reminded me, honestly, of a Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But I knew at that point, because I had always listened to Oprah. And then when I heard her say that, even back then, I kind of veered away. And I was backslidden for many years too, Carl. But I still knew that what she was doing was wrong, and it's sad. Um, yeah, Oprah, whew, I don't know if she's going to be used during the tribulation, but I know Oprah is going to be used somewhere, that's for sure. So you had brought up psychedelics, and I believe that drugs will be a huge part of the tribulation, such as psychedelics. I think mind altering drugs. Um, I don't know if you agree with that sentiment or not. So how would you, with psychedelics and everything I mean, look at all the people today, right? I did an episode regarding, YouTube pulled it, but it's okay. Or they didn't pull it, they pulled a section of it. So all of these, I mean, you're talking even Aaron Rodgers from the Green Bay Packers, Joe Rogan made it very popular. So, what is that guy called? Machine Gun Kelly. So these people have come out, Megan, whatever her name is, and they just seem to be like, yeah, psychedelics. I was just a brand new person when I left. And so what is your take on, I mean, again, I don't want to say too much because I want people to get the book, but these were just things where I was like, oh, I want to know his thoughts on that. So what are your thoughts? Do you think psychedelics will be a part of the tribulation part time?
Okay. All right.
Uh-oh, did I just ask a loaded question? My
No, no,
bad.
no, no, no. In fact, it's a great question. It's a
Okay.
really good question.
Okay.
I think it absolutely will, because it already is now.
Mm, mm, yeah.
What's really interesting, and I have a smattering of information laced through the book, especially in section 3, where I'm going through the history of our intellectual change, and I jump into what took place during the 60s and early 70s, where I dive into psychedelics and their adoption, especially within the counterculture and the academic culture of that era, and some of the shakeup that occurred because of it. And in doing the research and working it through, one of the things that struck me was the importance of in Hindu legend and Hindu lore, in the Vedas, the reference to Soma. And of course, if you've read any of Huxley's books, not any, but specifically Brave New World, Soma is the drug that, that really kind of shifts everybody and puts everybody in the proper state of affairs. Um, but in the Hindu literature, soma is an elixir that you drink, and it allows you to now realize the divine within. It opens up your eyes. It opens up your eyes to divine enlightenment. And so important was this elixir, and nobody knows what it really was, but it was some form of psychedelic that everybody is pretty much on the same page about. So important was that there are a series of hymns to soma, and soma becomes divine. And so it's kind of wild to think about, but Hinduism, because this is actually Vedic, this is pre-Hinduism, this is the foundation of Hinduism, that Hinduism may be a religion birthed out of a psychedelic experience, which is
Mm,
just, for me, that was like pop, wow,
mm,
insane, crazy. So right now we are in a psychedelic renaissance. We truly are in a psychedelic renaissance. And there is a lot of talk, a lot of discussion around psychedelics. Microdosing is huge, especially in Silicon Valley. When I'm at Burning Man, there's a lot of discussions on ayahuasca and DMT. And I mean, yeah, and I've been to a number of psychedelic conferences in the virtual world. I'm looking to attend my first one in person this coming May, so I'm pretty excited about that.
wow.
But in terms of your back to your question, I don't I don't speculate in my book. Okay, there's not a lot of speculation,
Mhm.
almost no speculation. It's just history. But
Yeah,
I do speculate on page 420, and allow me to read the speculation because it fits with
of
what you've
course.
just said. An interesting speculation can be extrapolated. And I stress that this is conjecture only. Could a worldwide spiritual experience be the catalyst for global unity? If so, how might this be achieved? Might a psychedelic agent be designed to induce human oneness? And could this agent be in the form of a mark, a personal identifier permanently placed on the hand or forehead? This mark, a tangible sign of global citizenship, like a digital loyalty card, would be needed for buying and selling. Possibly this mark could be tailored to interact with one's genetics and brain chemistry, unlocking a stimulant that heightens perception and induces flow, like a manageable global upper that everyone experiences together and no one wants to be without or opt out of. There would be no spectators in the networked planet. Everybody would be a participant in the global myth of a brave new world. Maybe this transhuman elixir would be called Soma. The above represents a techno pharma socio political spiritual wholeness, a total management and participant experience. Just a speculation. It's all it is.
Mm,
But boy, there's a role. There's a role in terms
mm,
of what psychedelics has already done in shifting Western thought towards spirituality. And I absolutely see it playing a very important part in this
mm,
massive worldview change that we see unfolding all around us. It definitely plays a part because it allows
yeah.
you to experience or feel that oneness, and
Mhm,
it shakes
mm,
shakes your perception to adjust to that experience.
yeah. It does, I mean, because if you hear people when they talk about their experience when they have when they go through that process, whether it be ayahuasca or something else, DMT, I know that I think Joe Rogan's really big on the DMT one, and then there's another one, and I can't remember, I feel like, I know not shrooms, but, Mike Tyson is big on the mushrooms, but and I'm not gonna lie, when I was in high school, the acid was the big thing, but I just had seen too many bad stories growing up in the church, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, I'm good." But the mushrooms, I guess because I said, "Well, I mean, it's from the ground." And I remember drinking mushroom tea, so I'm sure you remember that. And I remember my experience, and the only thing I remember is I couldn't sleep what I felt like a normal sleep for about a month, because whatever dark being came out of I remember the bed turned like blood red. I wasn't in blood, but it was blood red. And then this big dark thing just came out of the wall where the TV wasn't. We didn't have wall TVs back then, but the big, wooden TVs that weighed 9,000 pounds. So that wall there, and so that vision just kept me haunted for about a month. And I'm glad that I think God was like, okay, you want to be an idiot? That's great, but I'm not going to have you go down that path, because it scared, the living poop out of me. I was just like, what is happening? So my friends were all into the tripping on mushrooms, because I lived in Ocala, Florida. And I'm sure you're aware that the good mushrooms are after the cow's poop. So that's when you get the mushrooms. So when you're living in the middle of nowhere, because back then Ocala was pretty much cow patty country, well, there was a lot of cows and there was a lot of mushrooms, and it's always after it rains. So you would just go mushroom shopping. And so all of my friends were just like addicted to this mushroom tripping. And I remember every party, I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, because I just remember that darkness, so I can just imagine someone who wasn't saved going through that and then continuing on that journey of just mind altering mind. I mean, I just feel like little demons just jump into their brain and just have a field day. It's just a scary place to be, you
Well,
know?
and the other side that comes with it is when that fades away, you jump to the next experience, the next fad, the next,
Yeah.
and uh, let's be
Mm,
honest, the Christian community does this too.
yeah.
Uh, we're, I will look at the New Age movement, and they're jumping from crystals, and
Mm,
I actually collect rocks and crystals. I've been doing it since I've been a kid, and I've had people come
mhm.
into my office going, "Oh, look at those crystals! There's so much energy here." I'm like, "They're stones. They're just stones. How come you didn't feel that when you were walking down the sidewalk because cement is loaded with stones? I mean, they're beautiful
Right.
stones, but they're just stones." But we jump
Yeah.
from that,
Mhm.
then we jump to something else. We don't jump to yoga. We stretch until we
Mhm.
snap something. Then we jump to
Yeah.
something else. I mean, that's what
That's
we do. Hey, we
mhm.
search and search, and one satisfies temporarily.
Mm.
Then we
Yeah.
move to the next that might satisfy temporarily. True spirituality has to be, and this is something I actually explained to a gentleman at Burning Man. True spirituality has to be something grounded that does not change. That is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. It has to be
Mm.
grounded in the one who is true. That's what it has to be grounded in. And as
Mhm.
I explained to him, this spirituality, I'm a Burning Man. This spirituality is so temporary. We burn it at the end of the week and walk away.
Mm.
And he was like,
Mhm.
"Yeah, I've got to think about this." But the church
Mhm.
does the same thing. I mean,
Yeah.
now it's the Enneagram. Before that, it was the
Mm.
labyrinth. Before that,
Mhm.
and then it's holy yoga. And then,
Yeah.
either it's Jesus plus nothing, or it's Jesus plus
Mm.
whatever and everything that you can throw at it.
I love
Wh-
that.
Which is it?
Mm. That's powerful. Actually, I mean, really, that is, because you're exactly right. That's what I mean, even us in just our daily lives, right? We get bored. Our house isn't good enough. We want to remodel our kitchen. All of a sudden, our bedding isn't as, we don't like the bedding now, or we have to fix the bathroom, or pots that have never gave you a problem. All of a sudden, now you want new. I mean, just everything. We want the new and the fresh all the time. I mean, I have a really bad habit of getting a car a little bit often than I should, because I love the new technology, Carl. I love it. So you give me a car that has all the bells and whistles with technology, I'll work 7 jobs to pay that monthly car payment. Give me technology. I always said I was born in the wrong gen. Well, I'm glad I wasn't born like a millennial, because I would probably, I don't know where I'd be today. But yes, I love technology. So I understand newness and fresh. But that was an amazing point, because you are right. Like right now, the popular thing in churches is the Eucharist,
Hmm.
so, and you have people, I'm a name caller here, so I'm speaking on my behalf, not on your behalf, but Francis Chan is now one, pushing that. The Bible guy, he just needs to, Hank, I don't know if he just needs to take that label off of his name. But so now the Eucharist is very, very popular. So let's all make this seem like it's some euphoric thing when it's not scriptural. So I like that. I mean, you are correct. So I'm going to get off the oneness because I always thought, and then that's why I wanted to sit at me personally when I was reading your book. I kind of stayed in the oneness chapter a little bit because my mindset was always this namaste, kumbaya, oneness, everyone coming together. And then really, I mean, I even have it here that it's important to note that this is not about imposed cultural sameness or the crushing of expression or creativity. Tolerance and openness exists for culture. So when I was reading that, my mind was blown because I always had an idea of oneness, what that really meant until I really got into your book and I kind of understood what oneness was really about. And I think we've kind of talked about that a few things. Now, one thing too, I know I'm going to butcher this guy's last name. Douglas Groothuis. How do you say his last name?
Yeah, that's one of those names that I mean, and Douglas Groothuis, I think it's Groothuis,
Oh,
and
I
boy,
was totally off on that one.
and I probably butchered that too. You know,
Mm,
uh, I've looked him up a number of times, and in fact, I've got friends who are friends with him, and I really appreciate his work. He's done some really good work on the New Age, but it's one of those names when I've heard it like pronounced like 4 different ways, kind of like Tykrib. It's a messy
yeah.
name.
Well, so is he a genuine Christian philosopher?
Yes.
Like he is
Yeah.
okay. Because when I was reading some of his quotes, I was like, okay, I need to ask him that because I'm a little confused.
Yep.
But then when you read it, you can see him saying he describes da 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 da. But he really, I mean, some of his quotes, a new worldview is an offering a revolution in consciousness, beckons all is one, both good and evil. We are all God and our first graders should know it that the mind controls all if we only use it. There are ideas. I mean, I was just like, okay, I need to start reading a whole heck of a lot more because reading some of his quotes, again, my jaw was on the ground. And I'm not going to lie, I am probably on my own personally 60% with the book because I didn't want to rush through it because there's so much meat in the book. And for me, not being the smartest or the sharpest tool, was that what the saying is? I really have to take my time when I read. I really have to soak it in. Not that I don't comprehend, I do. But because I'm so fascinated with this realm, I was just like, I felt like a kid in a candy store.
That's awesome.
And I loved it.
And don't beat yourself up. I mean, I'm a farm boy with a grade 11 education. Okay, that's all I am. I'm just
Wow.
that I live in rural Manitoba. I can't hang a pile of accolades behind my name, and I wrote it in a way that it is information dense, but it's not
Mhm.
difficult to read.
Correct.
But it is information dense.
Yeah.
And so the fact that you're taking your time, awesome. It took me
Mhm.
4 years to write the silly thing. So
Yeah.
the fact that you're only
Yeah.
60% through after, a certain amount of time,
Yeah.
kudos to you. That's awesome.
I know, and I knew we were coming on, so I wanted to like hone in because, like I said, I was stuck in chapter one. I'm not going to lie for the first month after I bought the book, because I was like, my whole paradigm shifted. I really thought oneness was something completely different, and I was still on the same wavelength. Don't get me wrong, but not to
Hmm.
everything you brought in, and that's what I'm saying, guys. The book is not like so overwhelming where you're like, I don't understand this. So it is great. It's just a plethora of knowledge. It really is. And like you said, it's whoa, a lot of history. In a
And
good way.
yeah, and I wrote it that way specifically because there hasn't been anything really on the subject quite like
Mm-mm.
this. And I wanted to make sure that it would become like a foundational piece, something
Mhm.
I could pull a chapter from and write a whole new book just focusing on that one subject area, and then
Mhm.
use this as a continual launching pad to dive into these various subjects because there's a lot of different subjects that are covered,
For sure.
and there's a lot of footnotes. It's
Mhm.
footnote intense, so it's 1,800
Yeah.
footnotes actually.
Yeah. It's a lot.
Um, I've had some people sit down with a laptop and the book and then going through the footnotes and trying to find the
Mm.
books and the documents, and
Mm.
there's not a lot of URLs. It's mostly references to books that I personally have or
Mhm.
documents. Some of those are publicly accessible, some of those are not, but it's I've had a number of people read through the whole book without going through the footnotes and then returned. And these are nerds. I mean,
Mhm.
wonderful nerds. I get that. And then they've gone back and then they've scoured every one of the footnotes
Mm.
and did their own homework on it. And I'm like, awesome. You have
Yeah.
just educated yourself.
Mm.
And the book was a tool for that. And
Mhm.
that's all it was. And if that's all it ever will be for you,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I have a lot of because I bought the Kindle version, and I have a lot of highlighting and notes in my Kindle version, that is for sure. And then a lot of exclamation points, like, and a lot of whats, question marks. So, yeah, I have one book. I don't know where it's at. I don't think it's behind me. But to your point, there aren't a lot of books like that. So I've bought books from my own personal research. It's One World Religions and Something Else. It's by Brody. I don't remember the names on there. It's a two author book, but anyway, it kind of goes through all the false religions and things of that nature. But I've never had such an in depth study of so many different aspects of what we're gonna cover here today. I'm hoping I can get into some things. I could just talk to you for hours, so you guys can just hang up. We won't go live, and Carl and I will just speak for hours. Um, okay, so let me jump into chapter 3 because like I said, I can sit in chapter 1 forever and a day. So again, this chapter had my jaw open most of the time as well, because again, historically, now my family up in New York, a lot of Catholicism, Catholic. So my dad was born again. He got out of the Catholic religion. His family kind of didn't like him after that. But I don't know much about it. I know as a kid going in there, witnessing some things. When my grandmother died, I was really taken back by what was happening and I was confused. And I didn't make a lot of them happy for some of my comments. I was just really confused about a lot. Like, she's already dead. Why are we doing all of this? So, this gentleman, John Salisbury, regarding when Pope Adrian the Fourth's question, when he said that, when you quoted that, and I didn't write that down. I totally thought that I had that in here, and then I did not. So this guy literally called out the Pope. I don't know if you have that quote
I do
in
have
that
it right
chapter.
here.
Okay, perfect. So guys, well, explain it. You're the author again, so you can explain it. But again, I was just like, kind of like the lady on Oprah. I'm like, what? You said what to a Pope? So go ahead.
Oh, okay, so John of Salisbury was Pope Adrian's friend, and he had traveled. He was the Archbishop to Canterbury at the time, and he went to visit his friend Pope Adrian and was very vocal about his criticisms, and his criticisms became public. And this is of course pre-Reformation. This is 1150s when he approached Pope Adrian. Um, okay, I have to read the quote. It's a little bit lengthy, but I mean, okay, just put yourself back to roughly 1150 and think what kind of a scandal a statement like this would have been. Scribes and Pharisees sit in her seats and place on the shoulders of men unbearable burdens which they themselves do not deign to touch with even the tip of their finger. They lord it over the clergy instead of making their own lives an example to lead the flock to life by the straight and narrow path. Now he's talking here about um, the Catholic fathers and the Catholic hierarchy. They pile up costly furniture. They load their tables with gold and silver. They oppress the churches with exhortation, stir up strife, bring the clergy and people into conflict, never take compassion on the sufferings and misery of the afflicted, rejoice in the spoils of churches, and count all gain as godliness. They give judgment not for the truth, but for money. For money, you can get anything done today, and without waiting. But you will not get it done even tomorrow if you do not pay a price. Too often they commit injury and imitate the demons in thinking that they are doing good when they merely refrain from doing evil, except a few of them who fulfill the name and duties of a shepherd. Even the Roman pontiff himself is a grievous and almost intolerable burden to all. The complaint is everywhere made that while the churches which were built by the devotion of the fathers are falling into ruin and collapsing, he has built for himself palaces and walks abroad not merely in purple but in gold. The palaces of priests dazzle the eye, and meanwhile in their hands the church of Christ is defiled. Like,
I love it.
Gutsy,
I
gutsy,
know.
gutsy, you know? It's like
Right?
slap, slap, slap. Slap first
Yes.
of all to the bishops, slap to the bishops and all the hierarchy of the Catholic Church for the very fact that you even crush your own churches and you're
Mhm.
crushing even your own priests and your own people.
Yeah.
And then to Adrian, slap again.
No.
You know,
Yeah,
you're not walking around in purple anymore. You're walking around in gold, and you've defiled
yeah.
the Church of Christ.
Yeah,
Wow!
it was amazing.
Just
So go ahead, my bad.
no, I just when I read that, I was just like, that was one of those things where you just don't forget it because you realize
Yeah.
that you are now looking at a historical challenge, a charge, a
Mhm.
criticism
Mhm.
that would have been completely, you'd almost think of unheard of, but
Mhm.
no, no, the discontent was there because people recognized even at that point
Mm.
there's folly.
Yeah.
We have defiled Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, it's powerful. I mean, and like I said, my jaw was on the ground. I'm like, and this is what I mean, guys. Get the book. There is not one page that you're going to read where you're going to be like, this doesn't interest me. You're going to be like, what? And then you get to the next page. That's really, if I had a camera on my face, it would have been priceless. So you had mentioned these religions, and I say Christianity is a religion, because it is under that umbrella. There's many, I mean, Catholics are Christians, so that's 1.2 billion of them. But you mentioned Christianity, Greek paganism, Jewish Kabbalahism, Arab and Persian beliefs, and then scientific concepts. And then that big buzz term of interfaith is
Mhm.
used today. I personally believe that because the Antichrist rides the beast, he rides a religious system in. And when we're gone, when we're raptured, I believe pre-trib. I don't know your stance on that, but I'm a pre-tribber.
Mhm.
And so when we're raptured out of here, there's going to be a God like vacuum where we are. It's this world is going to be like something's going to change within people. I think there's going to be a great revival between the rapture and the beginning of the tribulation. That's my personal thought on that. Um, but when we hear that word today of interfaith, I think that again, he's not going to use the word Jesus. He's not the word Christianity is not going to be used. Kabbalah, it's not going to be a religion that we know of today, a name. Um, do you kind of agree with that? How do you see that one world religion taking place?
So, okay, interfaithism has really, in the last 40 years, come into its own. The first Parliament of World Religions happened in 1893 in Chicago. It was 100 years later when the next one took place in Chicago in 1993. Before 1993, there was already a slow gelling of interfaith ideas that were starting to percolate, especially around the idea of saving the planet, environmentalism, some of the early thoughts and discussions around sustainability back in the late 1980s. And before that, even in the 1970s, you had ecumenical and some interfaith events that were taking place around the idea of how do we save the earth. And one of the kind of the discussion points of interfaithism has historically kind of meant are we moving towards harmony or are we moving towards unity? And when I attended this parliament in 2015, the Parliament of World Religions, at that point it was the first time I'd heard it really expressed in a significant way that we're not working towards harmony. You can keep your religions, you can keep your diversity of faiths, but we are working towards unity in that we all come to a common agreement. We all recognize the commonality of our spirituality. We recognize our common feelings. We really recognize our common sense of the sacred and our purpose and our meaning. So you can keep your diversity as long as you are all in unity, working for the same goals, the same programs, the same output, the same idea.
Mhm.
I see this as a stepping stone or a launching pad to take it up a notch. And I personally believe that the one world religion will combine those elements. It will combine those aspects where maybe you can keep your faith, you can keep your spirituality, whatever that may look like. But just like as in the time of Caesar's, you still have to say Caesar is God,
Mhm.
even though you may worship Diana.
Mm.
That
That's a
was
good
how the
one.
Roman system worked. I mean, that was actually
Yeah.
one of the litmus tests for the early church.
Mm,
Under the the Roman fist, would you not just simply, it wasn't just simply about denying Christ, or whether you're a Christian or not, but the real issue was, were you willing to say that Jesus is Lord and at the same time still say Caesar is Lord?
mm. A little
So
conundrum they were in.
yeah, yeah, very much so, very much so. So you know, to the point of what would a one world religion look like. Um, I see both elements coming into play, where almost like the pagan Roman era, where you could, go to worship at the temple of Isis or the temple of Zeus, or Aphrodite's or Diana, whatever, or even say the name Jesus, so long as you
Mm,
still bent your knee to Caesar.
yeah.
And the other side to consider as well, and Kim, this is just a thought, is that politics itself has become religious.
Mm,
It is religious. Globalization, and this is kind of
mhm,
one of the takeaways I hope people get as they read the book, that globalization, though we look at it as a political construct, and it is political.
mhm.
Don't worry, the interfaith movement is just as political. Um, and there's a reason I call that chapter spiritual politics, because it is politics as well. But globalization ends up, if you really peel it all away, it becomes a salvation claim. It is essentially religious. Allow me to read one quote
Sure.
that hits that. Do you remember Jean Stapleton, the
Oh
actress
my,
Jean Stapleton?
yes. I'm like,
Okay,
that name sounds really familiar. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, all right. Archie Bunker.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I'm not going to try to mimic her voice because I can't. Uh, she was along with John Denver and Walter Cronkite and Lloyd Bridges. She was a
Mm,
big proponent of what's called world federalism. And world federalism is the world federalist movement is the oldest running pro world government lobby and advocacy organization that's been in existence since the 1940s. I got into the United Nations Millennium Forum because at that point I was a member, and there's a
mm,
backstory to it that's in the book. So, understanding that world federalism is about world government. This is what she says. And now notice, this isn't a political statement. It is, at its core, religious. The goal of the World Federalists is peace through unity of government. Okay, there's your political side. This is where it deviates. We must support their vision of oneness in diversity, for it is the salvation of humanity.
mm,
I'm sorry, that is literally a salvific, messianic, we are our own redeemer story. That's what
mm,
that is. It is a religious claim. I'm going to give you another one. This is the Global Citizenship 2000 passport, the little passport, symbolic passport I got when I attended the Global Citizenship Congress way back in 1997, which was literally 1,000 days before the year 2000. And in the back of it is a little poem, and allow me to read it to you. Decide to be a global citizen, a good inhabitant of the planet Earth, a member of the great human family. Pray, think, act, feel, and love globally, and you will aggrandize yourself to the outer limits of being. Know this planet, love this planet, care for this planet, for you come from Mother Earth. You are made of her elements. You are the Earth, becoming conscious of herself. Then it goes on to say, unite global citizens to save and heal planet Earth, and to make our mother bloom again as the most beautiful planet in the universe. The line that should hit you is this one: to save and heal,
mm,
because that is a salvific claim. That
mm,
is a messianic claim. So when you examine the articles that come out of the World Economic Forum, or if you examine the articles in mainstream media around, like, let's say, the COP27 conference that took place last fall in Egypt, the climate change conference, take note of the language, and you can't help, seeing it now. When you see it, you can't unsee it.
mm. Yeah.
As the language, even within the headlines of their articles, the headlines of what's coming up in the mainstream media is world leaders working to save the planet. Can corporations get together, to save Mother Earth? And it's salvation. It really is. It is a salvation, salvation, salvation. So, and this is something that hit me hard when I was at the Parliament of World Religions in 2018, when the um, when one of the board members for the Parliament thanked all of us for engaging in the salvation of the earth. Because if we can save the earth, we redeem ourselves. We are both sinners, and we are both our own sinners and our own messiahs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so, what does a world religion look like? It has to mirror back to Genesis chapter 3, where man says that we can be, we basically follow the lie, we can be as God.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that, by the way, too, with the man of lawlessness who puts himself in the place of God.
Yeah.
And so it is about creation ultimately saying we will be our own saviors. We will be our own
Mm-hmm.
messiahs. And that may have a, that not what may, it will have a political and a religious and a cultural component.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all fundamentally a theological statement.
Mm. So let me ask you, this is totally off topic, but I'm listening to you ever so engagingly. So my brain just shifted into a really weird question. So again, this is me. I believe the rapture happens. Then there's some form of a gap. I don't know how long that would be between the signing of the peace treaty, the beginning of the tribulation. I personally don't think it's going to be that long, but long enough to have a great lie of a deception of aliens or whatever. Then the Antichrist comes on the scene. I believe, though, during that gap, he's on the news. He's kind of in the front lines, because I just kind of like a Barack Obama, right? And then all of a sudden, like, remember Barack at the DNC? I believe it was 2004. And here, before he went to the DNC, he was on Oprah. So he was already kind of in the limelight a little bit. Then all of a sudden, this powerhouse comes and speaks. I have always been, even in my backslidden stage, a Republican, but I heard this guy and I was like, oh my gosh. So he even captivated me. So then, of course, he ran for president. We all know the end of history there. So, but that's what I feel like the Antichrist is going to kind of be like, a little, not Barack Obama, but kind of in that shape and form, and kind of rising and behind the scenes. Then, boom, he comes on the scene with the signing of the peace treaty. So here we were, the first half is this religious system, whatever that may look like. But while you were talking, my brain kept going to, like, okay, so we have this, you want to love Jesus, serve, that's your God, or you want, Krishna, or, the Mahdi, whatever God you want to worship, that's fine. But then how do you think, and again, totally off topic, not even in the book, but you brought my brain to this. How would the Antichrist, because here we are now all in our own personal kumbaya spiritual realm. Then in the second half of the tribulation, bing, bam, bada, boom, y'all are going to worship me now. How do you think that shifts so easily? Because people take the mark. It's not forced on them. They're willingly taking a mark. They're following after the beast. So how do you go from kumbaya, I'm a Hindu, to I'm going to follow this man right here? How do you, again, totally off topic. I'm just curious now, because you said all that before.
And
That's what I do, Carl. I have conversational ADD. So
that is awesome.
I'm engaged. I'm listening. I usually follow the chats and everything. I'm like, okay, I love you guys, but not tonight. So go ahead.
I'll be honest, I don't really know. I don't know how that will all play out that way, but I think a key is probably the mark of the beast itself, because that probably is something that will bind them. It will be something that is common to each person.
So like a DNA type of a thing.
Possibly, but for whatever reason, see, I look at the mark of the beast, and what I'm seeing is, and I could be off. I'm not going to deny that. I see that almost as a type of a spiritual contract. You take this, and now you are, doesn't matter your religious persuasion.
Yeah,
you have now engaged in a contract that is beyond just simply the mere buying and selling, though that becomes the practical application of it, the practical position. But spiritually, it's done something deeper. It's a contractual system that now engages you in a way that you can't disconnect yourself from, or maybe you will never want to disconnect yourself from it. That's just the only, that's what kind of pops into my own head is, all right, what is that stepping stone? It may be the mark itself, whatever that may look like. That there may
Yeah.
be that component where that bridges it. It bridges the physical and the spiritual.
That's a great idea. And just so you know, I'm so engaged in this conversation. Sandra and I, we were working on all these things. So basically, when she does that notification bell, let me digress here. So, Sandra, can you put up that notification bell real quick? Because I have a fancy thing here, Carl. It's a voice modification, but I can add sounds and stuff. I won't tell you. We practiced, some weird sounds. Let's just say like burping and stuff. So it was pretty funny. But I was going to give you a round of applause when you came on, but I'm like, I don't know. So anyway, when that notification bell comes on, see, I want it to be funky, but I'm so engaged in the conversation, I totally forgot to do the sound effect. So I'm so sorry. I'm just failing everywhere tonight. I really, I'm trying. Okay, so let me get back on topic.
So,
Great,
so
great response.
do you need a sound effect? How about ding?
I do.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that.
There's many that I can do. So I have this. It's a really cool program. I can change my voice. I've done a book on audio with Revelation.
Oh, cool.
And so I'll just show this on the screen real quick. So basically I had to use I felt like I was gaming. I was like old school Kim PC gaming again. Because I had to keybind in order to hit, because I would talk in my normal voice in Revelation, but then if it was someone else like Jesus, not that I'm Jesus, but I would have then my voiceover. So I had to like keybind. So as you can see, I have all these dude. That's what I called the guy. His name was Dude. I was just like key binding. So anyway, I'm saying all that because I love my program. I love it. So, but I'm trying to get this book on audio with Revelation completed for Sandra and other people. I've done the first 5 chapters and then I'll do the rest. According to some people, I have a radio announcer's voice, and they like when I read that. People say I'm calming, and I'm not really calming, but that's okay. I'm like, okay, I don't
Hey,
know
run
what
with it.
Kim you're listening to, but I'm certainly not a calming. I'm not a calming effect, but that's all right. Okay. All right, let me move on. I'm digressing here. It's because again, there's so much information. I hope you guys are having a good time like I am. I'm so intrigued by this conversation. I told you it would be probably my best podcast yet. Okay, so chapter 7 and chapter 9, they kind of blend
Mm,
nicely together on some topics. And one thing that I want you to please talk about, because I've had many people during Q&As. I know when Dr. JB Hickson was on, I had a poll come up on YouTube if whatever topic, I forgot what they all were, and I can't say it. I really Rosicrucianism. I can never say that word. I know what it
yes,
is.
yes, Rosicrucianism. Yep.
Okay, so a lot of people have asked, what is that? Because we all know,
Mm,
like we talk about, Freemasonry or things of that nature. But when it comes to that word, I've had a lot of people say, hey, Kim, can you kind of explain what that means? So if you can, I don't know if there's any people here who have asked that question, but I would like to, if you can, just to kind of explain what that word entails.
sure. Rosicrucianism is it's a number of things. It's a secret society or a number of secret societies around the idea of Rosicrucianism, which birthed out of a German individual who has a mystical connection or a mystical esoteric knowledge, and it comes out of that Reformation period. This is already a number of hundreds of years old, and walks hand in glove in many respects with Freemasonry from that era. It was one of the mystery schools, one of the mystery esoteric worldviews or philosophies that kind of had an undercurrent, became accepted, or almost like a bit like a fad in certain social circles, especially in Europe, and a lot within Eastern Europe. And then by the turn of the last, no, pardon me, uh, roughly the maybe 1870s, 1880s up to about 1910, 1915, there's a whole slew of Rosicrucian societies that popped up. The ancient mystical order of the Rose and Cross, which I think still has, I know it has a headquarters, but I'm trying to think where in California. It's not San Jose. Well, maybe it is San Jose. I think it is. Anyways, there's a number of Rosicrucian orders that emerged at that time period, and they were a lot of them were connected into Freemasonry, the more esoteric side of Freemasonry, beyond just simply the 3 degrees in the Blue Lodge. And so what Rosicrucian is essentially is an esoteric philosophy. It is this. There's a combination of Egyptology that's in it, Kabbalism, and it's a blending, and in some respects it mirrors some of the teachings and some of the at least philosophies that you see within Theosophy, which
Mm,
is considered to be a kind of a science of truth or a science of religions, that there's no religion higher than truth, and it's really pulling from a number of various mystical schools of thought and creating this experience and this teaching of what is essentially a form of oneness.
mm. Yeah, it's I mean, there's a lot to dive into on that, and I personally have not really dove into that aspect because there's just so many different I don't even know. Because part of me, I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist by any means. I'm not. I do believe in the Illuminati, but not to like the whole Justin Bieber. I got one eye. I don't know the depths of all of that. To be honest with you, I
Okay.
do believe
Yeah.
in it. I know the Illuminati is real, but
Yeah. So allow me to give you maybe a little bit of perspective with this.
sure.
I have in my possession a very large section in my library on Rosicrucianism, specifically the mystical order of the Rosencross, AMORC, AMORC. Um, and publicly they have, I think it's 9 degrees, but then they have degrees that go beyond that, and I have a large collection of materials from that had been given to me from a person
Mm,
who was very involved with it and quite high up. She was in the 12th degree because there was degrees beyond what was publicly acknowledged, or at least normally understood. And in her personal correspondence, because I have her personal correspondence going back and forth with leaders of AMORC, when she hits that certain degree, the correspondence, her titling begins to change, and it's no longer dear frater or dear this or dear sister. It is now member of the Illuminati.
mm,
And now the lady who was involved, I knew her. I knew her. Um, Actually, she am becoming a Christian at a prophecy conference that I was had been attending as well. And at that time, I was working for Gary Kaw, who is a Christian author out of Indiana. And she approached our book table, and we ended up having this conversation. Some stuff happened in the conversation. It kind of freaked her out. But then 3 days later, she came back to me and she says, I became a Christian and I want to give you my
mm,
library of materials.
mm,
And so the fact that in her own correspondence she is recognized as a member of the Illuminati when she reaches that certain level, to me was indicative that it becomes a label. Doesn't mean that she was now a member of the Illuminati in the sense of the Bavarian Illuminati or these historical Illuminati groups.
mhm,
No, but rather that they themselves at a certain point bestow that title upon each other. That it is like a position of honor within your specific order, whether it's
mm,
the Order of the Illuminati or whether it may be a certain other esoteric Masonic group or a Thelmic group or whichever group it is. But all of a sudden now
mhm.
there's a sense of you've achieved a certain order, and now all of us, we all recognize your position, the fact that you were enlightened.
Wow.
Yeah. So to me, when I hear the word Illuminati, and a lot of people,
Mm,
debating, whether it exists or not, whether it exists now or not,
yeah.
I don't know, but I do
Mhm.
know that within the structure of occultism and Western magical and occult traditions, when you do reach certain levels, and my friends was a good case in point, it's just almost it's almost like a given. This is now who you are. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean you get a little card that says, "Hi, I'm a
Right.
member of the Illuminati." No, no,
Right.
it's like we acknowledge and recognize that you have a special place.
Yeah. You're making me want to like do this or something. So a nifty feature that we have here. So Sandra, if you can take that ticker off really quick. Guys, please give her a thumbs up. She's first. She's new at the StreamYard like I am. And from what I'm seeing popping up, hopefully it's not too overwhelming. I think she's doing it perfect timing. But now, because we have this amazing StreamYard, I can put comments on the screen that you can actually see. So Mojava asked this while we were talking about, can you see that comment from her?
Hmm.
So can you, and there's
Yeah.
another one too. So guys, when we do a Q&A with Carl, hopefully we have time for that. Because he's going to stay around until midnight. He is a night owl, I guess. Hopefully you'll be tonight. So anyway, but we'll do that with Q&As as well as get them on the screen. So anyway, can you ask her? And then I have another question after that as well.
Yeah, very much, very, very similar. So I cut my teeth in terms of my early days of research trying to understand Freemasonry. Okay, and there's a backstory to it. I was being pressured to join the lodge. I never did join the lodge, but things were said to me that, in a sense, forced or compelled me to now dig into this. I didn't know that there was even books, Christian books, on the subject. And then from Freemasonry, I ended up learning about theosophy. And then as I dived deeper into the realm of occult literature, occult history, esoteric thought, Rosicrucianism comes in. And you realize that Rosicrucianism, in fact, there's a fair amount of overlap between Rosicrucianism and esoteric Freemasonry. There is a fair amount of overlap. And then you have some of the fraternal orders, your Greek societies, your special little clubs in your universities, like Skull and Bones. Um, that's another, that's a really good example. And I don't get. Okay, this is, I'm not an American. I'm a Canadian. So here's one of the things that kind of blew me away when I did live for a short time in the U.S. Just how important in your university culture it is to be a member of a Greek house, of a fraternal order.
Yeah.
And I've read through a number of the rituals and the different ceremonies that some of these Greek houses do as well. And I'm like, smokes, there's incredible parallels within Freemasonry,
Mhm.
and incredible parallels within esoteric societies. Like, hello, um, it's almost like America has, you're walking two paths at the same time. There's
Yeah.
a Judeo-Christian side or a component. You almost look at it as like the ethos of your national fabric. And at the same time, there is this esoteric, Masonic, Rosicrucian stream that's running in there
Mm.
as well. Um, Probably some of the best examples of that really emerge in the 1800s, where you have American churches on one hand, and you've got great revivals and all kinds of things are taking place, and at the same time you've got all kinds of new religious movements, spiritism,
Mm.
coming out of New York, Joseph Smith, uh, Christian
Mm.
Science. It's
Yeah.
all popping. It's like pop, 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 all at the
Mm.
same time with each
Mhm.
other. At that same time period, you see a whole plethora of Masonic, esoteric, theosophical, Rosicrucian schools of thought that all emerge at the same time. It's really, there's a time period, Kim, it's
Yeah.
really remarkable if you look at it from roughly the 1870s, after your Civil War is ended, within a decade or so, you see all kinds of new religious experiences emerge, and they
Mhm.
really keep going up until about the 1910s, right before World War One.
Yeah.
And I look at that time period, and I'm wondering, and I don't bring it out in the book, but I do allow it to kind of sit for a bit. And I'm just wondering, just as I'm thinking right now, like, what was the dynamic that was happening in your culture, your nation's culture, that birthed all of a sudden this radical interest in spiritual things, knowing that
Yeah.
that was also the height of modernity, when Darwinism and materialism and
Mhm.
socialism was starting to really come into play, and they both
Yeah.
seemed to pop up at the same time. And then in the
Mhm.
1960s, again, same kind of thing, except now it became
Mhm.
individualized,
Yeah.
as you took the sacrament of LSD,
Mhm.
and as you now crossed your legs and did yoga as the East
Yeah.
came to the West. And all of a sudden, poof, there's this
Mhm.
massive explosion of
Yeah.
renewed interest in spirituality,
Mhm.
as we reject forms of modernity, at the same time reject Christianity. So I don't know, there's some really
Yeah.
remarkable stuff historically. And I don't know, I just look at all this and I'm going, okay, Um,
Hmm.
there's a lot of stuff going on at the same time. There's a lot of things at work.
Yeah.
So, and it's happening now. We're living in a
Hmm.
pluralistic society.
Yeah.
Interfaithism, it
Yeah.
is a pluralistic society. Your doctor might
Hmm.
be a Muslim. The taxi cab
Yeah.
driver might be a Sikh.
Hmm.
The lady at the checkout counter at Wally World might be a witch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I've had people freak out when I say that I've been to certain places like Wiccan conferences, and I've sat through rituals and
Yeah. I read
ceremonies,
that in the book. Yeah.
or I've gone
Hmm.
to Burning Man, and people kind of freak out.
Hmm.
I'm going,
Hmm.
you know something? It's all around you.
Hmm.
Those people are your neighbors.
Yeah.
Maybe even your family.
Yeah.
Do you freak out when you walk into like McDonald's or
Right.
Burger King? No, you don't.
I do because I know the chicken nuggets aren't real. No, I'm teasing.
But
Like, wait a second. I can get a Big Mac and another one for $1. In Biden's economy, what kind of meat is $1 right now? So, is this meat? So,
but the
sorry.
bottom line is, can we be ambassadors for
Right.
Christ and
Mm,
exhibit truth and grace, truth with grace,
hmm.
as our culture is radically shifting, and I mean high
Absolutely.
gear shifting?
Mm.
Can we do that?
Yeah, for sure. So Hannah, I think she was asking this question here. Is it like Hare Krishna? I guess she was
Mm,
when you were on
yeah,
the. Okay, so you know what she's talking about because
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't.
No, Hare Krishna is Hinduism. It emerges out of Hinduism. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, you go
okay.
Rama Rama, Krishna Krishna, Hara Hara, um, and back in the 70s and the early 80s, I do remember one time running into a Hare Krishna in a small city just east of me, and they were handing out flowers and little tracts and stuff, and with their bald heads and
Hmm.
their robes. But that is um, a Hindu movement.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So Meg had said this. Her grandfather was a 32-degree Scottish Rite Freemason, and she's wondered about that. So I'm
Yep.
glad I can help you out there. Others, and it's a challenging subject to broach here today because it is, like for instance, my amazing governor here. He is, which there's no proof, but he's been. Uh, I guess people are saying that he is part of Skull and Bones.
Mm.
So I
Oh,
didn't know that. I mean, and again, it's not like you can find proof of anyone, just like you
right.
can't say that person is a 33-degree because there's no proof. Like these secret societies are definitely um, secret. So I don't want to be stuck here on comments. So if there's anything else, Sandra, where someone's asking something like that, um,
Can I offer a
sh-
resource?
sure.
Okay, I have another web page called forcingchange.org.
Yep.
I edited and produced a monthly magazine style publication for 9 years, and one of those issues dealt on Freemasonry, and I've made it into a publicly accessible article. You can go to forcingchange.org, and in the article section, you don't even have to sign up, but the sign up is free. It doesn't cost you anything. Just put in your email, sign up, and you can have access to all 9 years of back issues and reports. And but the other thing that there is, just without even having to sign up, is an article, a report I did on Freemasonry. Years ago, I had a gentleman, a 32nd degree Mason, come up to me in a Christian conference because I had thrown out Freemasonry just as a sideline in my presentation. It wasn't even the point. And he came to my book table, to my wife specifically, and he held out his hand and showed her his ring and said, "I'm a 32nd degree Mason. Your husband just mentioned Masonry. What's going on?" I'm like,
Wow.
yeah. So all of a sudden I had this big conversation, and it was a really good conversation. It was,
Mm.
I thought maybe he would be like really angry. And I think at first he was, but no, I give him credit. He was very gracious, and we had a very hospitable, very good conversation. He had been a Christian for a number of years, but he didn't see that there was incompatibilities between the two because, after all, his daddy was a Mason, his granddaddy was a Mason, and he had been in the church all his life.
Yeah.
Um, and so I said, "Hey," and then I gave him some of the reasons why he needed to reconsider Masonry, including, well, two main things. I don't even go down the road of their blood oaths, any of that, because that's the packaging, that's the outer trappings. That's just the what's on the outside of it. But really, at the core of it is religious universalism. where it doesn't matter if you are a Christian or a Hindu or a Muslim, you bow to the
Mm.
same altar. It is about religious universalism. And then it's also about
Mhm.
perfectibility, that by degree you become perfected, that you enter the lodge as the rough ashlar, the rough stone. By the time it's done, through your rites and your degree work, you have perfected yourself into the perfect ashlar, the perfect cut stone, which is really ironic because it's ultimately saying you're just going to be another brick in the wall. There's a
Yeah.
song like that. And so I mentioned this to this gentleman, and he was like, I hadn't thought of it like that, but all of a sudden his brain was starting to pop, and he was going,
Mm.
I see issues. And so I said, I will do you a favor. I will write a report pulling from your own Masonic literature that as a Mason you're supposed to study, and you don't, because most Masons, like most Christians, don't study what they're supposed to study. You're supposed to study as
Yeah.
Christians the Bible. They're supposed to study their own works of, esoteric history and philosophy. And you don't.
Mm.
You work,
Yeah.
you go home, you watch football, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But no, study. And so
Mm.
I put this report together about 6 months later, and this is just a private thing. 6 months later, he got back and says, I wrote a letter of resignation. Christianity and Masonry is not compatible.
Wow.
Because, and I said, don't believe me. Please don't believe me.
Mm.
Go into your own Masonic library because you
Mhm.
have the books,
Mm.
and then pour into it and figure this out on your own and ask those critical questions and see if this is actually there. Don't take my word for it. And that's what
Mm.
he did. And I'm like, well, he had to. I mean, if he was
Yeah.
going to be honest with himself, he had to, hey?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so he resigned, and then
Mm.
said, yeah, you could take what you wrote to me, and if you want to, publish it. His name's not in there anywhere. There's no reference at all to him, but that's the
Right.
backstory of that article that you can access
Yeah.
on my webpage, forcingchange.org.
Mm.
So, you know,
Wow. And
stuff like
that's
that.
helpful. Yeah, because I have a friend who is a Freemason, and they just he just what are they called when they he's just moving up the ranks, but and I'm drawing a blank. So I'm not praying, guys. I'm trying to think. So I have my eyes closed. Are they like the worship leader or
Oh, worshipful
worships?
master.
Is that what it is? Yeah. So he like does something before it starts. And I mean, his kids have kind of talked to him about it, and he's like, well, we pray. Okay. But I didn't know. So that's a great thing. Maybe a tool. I mean, I won't tell him, but I'll, message his daughters who have tried to
Hmm.
reach him before. I mean, I don't know the condition of his heart. I don't
Right.
know if I call him a Sino now, like a rhino. It was, so I call him a Sino, Christian in name only. I'm stealing that. I'm not really that creative, but so I don't know, but I do know that if I were to say that to them, like I don't want to say his name, let's just call him Pete, have Pete go into the library archives, is what you're saying, and
Hmm.
compare that to what the Word of God says, and hopefully his,
Yeah.
eyes will be opened.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had people take my
Mm,
material and that article specifically, and then, and
yeah.
because this is an approach that I've suggested, take the article, give it to them,
Hmm.
and ask the question. You
Mm,
don't come forward and say, "See, this is what," don't do that. Don't do
yeah.
that. Instead, you go up to them and you say, "Can you please give me your feedback? I've read this.
Mm,
I'd love to know your feedback."
mm,
Or is it accurate? That's maybe a better way of doing it. Is this article, is this
mm,
material accurate? And sometimes they'll admit yes, and it'll start to change some thinking. Sometimes they
hmm.
just dig their heels in even more, but regardless, use it as a lever to open a door.
Yeah, I'll definitely share that with her. I kind of scroll through that website. I have it in all the links on all our platforms right now. Oh, Adrian, holy mackerel. I'm telling you, this is how God works. Let me tell you, Carl, this was not part of my show notes. Adrian, just to put her on blast, that's her dad, literally, that I'm talking about right now. And she just happened to join this live. So, right, that's just God, because this was not part of my show notes. I can literally cry. I get so emotional when I have a God moment, because there's a reason. So Adrian, I'm glad you're watching. I will share that website with you. I will share that article with both you and Devin. And talk to your dad again. I'm not mentioning his name, but wow, guys, that is just like a God moment right there. Absolutely. So I have nothing else to say. We're done. I'm floored right now. Thank you, Jesus. So,
But you know, Kim, if this kind of stuff can help one person,
yeah.
just even one person wrestle
Hmm.
through it,
Yeah.
if salvation comes out of it in some area, fantastic.
Hmm.
Um, and if not, even if it just helps people, and this is one of the things, I mean, when I it's not just simply about writing the book, but it's about the whole work that we've been doing. 'Cause I've been doing this full time since '97,
Hmm.
and it's because so often when you're doing this kind of research work, a lot of people are going, "Well, what's the point? Because
Yeah.
shouldn't you just know Jesus, and shouldn't that just be enough?" And yes, yes.
Hmm.
At the same time, it's people are asking questions. People want to know. People are hungry to try to understand what's happening to their own families, to the world around them, to their own churches. Like, what are these external pressures? What are these forces of change? Which is why I
Hmm.
published my journal, Forcing Change.
Hmm.
And if one person can just all of a sudden get it, and it becomes a form of encouragement, and by encouragement, I just don't mean it affirmed their feelings. I like the word encouragement, but I like what encouragement is based off of, the word courage.
Yeah.
To be courageous, not to be
Hmm.
shaken, not to be moved. If it does that, awesome, fantastic,
Hmm.
because we need courage.
We do. Yeah. I
And,
mean,
and,
because,
and
yeah.
courage only comes when we are armed with what is true.
Amen.
Otherwise it's just a falsehood. It's an illusion.
I agree. Absolutely. And I'm glad. I mean, there's a lot of people asking questions right now regarding that. So are you okay if we just, you're just going
Right?
to have to come back on? Is that cool?
Yeah, that's awesome. You're the host. You
Okay.
take it where
Well,
you want.
yeah, because I feel like we have just shifted, and now everyone's asking because there are a lot of people. Because you have to remember, me being from the South, and I know, not that you don't understand the United States, of course you do, but the South, as I'm sure you know, is a Freemason market. You know,
Yep.
you have a lot of these Southern Baptists who are into not just Freemasonry, but what is the other one? The law, is it the Moose Lodge and all that stuff? So there's a lot of things happening in the South, um, and they kind of bring in hints of Jesus, but they also don't pray in the name of Jesus at the end of their prayer. So that I do know. But so there was one, yes. So Vicky, I'll just say, totally digress here. My amazing governor is about to run for president, but I didn't vote for him to be president. I voted him to be governor for the next 4 years. So that's gonna. I don't know how that happens. Okay, so here's a question here from Meg. If you want to address that, well, I think there might have been another one up top. Can you see all that?
Yeah, I can. My grandfather was 32nd degree Mason. Could that have opened a door to cause my grandmother, myself, my mother, and myself to see things? Praise the Lord, He saved me from that 3 years ago. Yeah, well, yes, praise the Lord, He saved you from that. Absolutely. That's a good question. I don't have an answer for that, in terms of what it may have done. I had a conversation, ironically, today with a gentleman about uh, the idea of generational curses and generational problems, and I had to remind him that the very real implication of what this looks like is not just simply that there is because there's a lot of, how do I put this? I got to think how I'm going to put this. A lot of people think that maybe you're passing a spirit or a demon on from one generation to the next. I think when you're taking a look at generational influences, it is in many respects, you have now planted a seed of a thought or the seed of an idea. There's a worldview. Grandpa had a worldview. It affected dad. It affected my brothers. It affects me. It affects and affects and affects. And Paul makes it very clear in Romans chapter 12 that we are to have a new mind, because it begins here. It starts here. And when you have the knowledge of who Christ is, then it impacts here.
Mm.
As you were broken, and now you want to have that relationship with God. Likewise, when we are looking at things like generational Freemasonry, when we're looking at things like witchcraft, yeah, that worldview, it's going to be it's going to be influencing from generation to generation until somebody all of a sudden is impacted by the truth, and that's Jesus Christ, and that breaks that. What about lower level Freemasonry?
Mhm.
The first 3 degrees, your entered apprentice, your fellow crafter, and your master mason degrees. Actually, a lot of people don't realize that in Freemasonry, the third degree is it. That's the highest degree in Freemasonry.
Mhm.
It's the Blue Lodge, and that's called the Blue Lodge. That is the pillar, and then from there you can branch out beyond that. But they don't actually teach you a lot in the first 3 degrees. There's not a lot that in terms of, all right, this is what we believe. Nobody really tells you what they believe. It's more like, we're going to show you, and
Mhm.
it'll be done through the rituals. It'll be done through ceremonies. It'll be done through these moral stories. And then at the same time, you are encouraged, here, read these books, read the books of, maybe Albert Pike, or maybe Manly P. Hall, or some of these other Masonic scholars. And from there, you're supposed to, as a Mason, you are supposed to now work out. Let's put it in Christianese. You're supposed to work out your faith. Most guys don't.
Mhm.
They'll just go on from degree to degree to degree and not really work it out. And actually,
Mhm.
Albert Pike and other Masonic historians have basically said the same thing. You know,
Yeah.
not 1 in 10,000 Mason actually knows. Essentially, I'm just paraphrasing, what the craft is really about.
Mm. And they
So
don't.
no,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of naivety that way. So yeah, I mean, uh, every little town, every city across North America and across Europe has, at one point or another, it seems, have had a Masonic influence.
Mhm.
Uh, Demographically, they're dying. They're becoming older, and they're dying off. The 40s and 50s is when it had its
Mhm.
its big boost in membership, but they have been steadily and slowly whittling away. Nevertheless, the worldview of universalism and how you can perfect yourself,
Mhm.
those ideas remain in play. I know that somebody else also had something about Eastern Star. Eastern Star is the women's
Mhm.
auxiliary of the Masonic Lodge, and in the Eastern Star, if you have family members in the Eastern Star, they'll confirm this. You will do your ritual, your ceremonies, um, on in a pentagram, a great big pentagram, and the words, there's a letter at each of the five points of the star, and it's FATAL, and it's supposed to be the Kabbalistic word to say fair among thousands, altogether lovely, but it says fatal. And I'm like, can't you see this? It says fatal right here. And there's a ton of Bible stories and allegories and allusions that are wrapped up in their mythology and their legend, so to speak. Um, and so it's kind of this watered down experience in a way, but
Mhm.
it's still there. It's that stepping stone of, not even stepping stone, because of, as ladies, you can't join the lodge. There's reasons for that, but yeah,
It's
it's
crazy.
still part and parcel. Can't
Yeah.
can't can't divorce it.
It's probably why it'll wear out. You'll have the women feminists saying, "How come I'm not allowed in there?"
But
Okay.
well, this is
Go
really interesting, because this is really old school stuff. This is
It
like
is.
70s, 80s, 90s, and
Yeah.
then before. Today, and there was one Masonic scholar, man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Maybe it was Foster Bailey, who basically wrote in the 1920s or 30s that there's going to come a point in time, and I'm just paraphrasing, that the culture will be so accepting of our worldview, in essence, that we don't even need a lodge anymore.
Mm.
Kind of reminded me when I was
Yeah.
at a Krishna temple, a Hindu temple, south of Salt Lake City. A lot of people think of Salt Lake City in Utah as Mormon country, and
Yeah.
it is. But
Yes.
in Spanish Fork, Utah, in the heart of one of the most concentrated Mormon counties in America, sits this gleaming white Krishna temple. Yeah,
Wow.
seriously. And so I spent some time there, and the guru told me that we're evangelizing America. And it's in my book, and we're evangelizing America through yoga and the holy color festivals, um, and that you don't have to be a Hindu. And then they recognize that you're not going to go join an ashram, just
Mm.
like you're not going to run now and go and join Freemasonry. You might, but you probably won't.
Right.
But you're all going to have your Hinduness is
Mm.
going to be lived out. It's just
Wow.
accepted. And
Yeah,
and Kim, isn't that where we're at now?
for sure. Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's
Too
just
much. It's so much so I can't keep up nowadays, to be
you
honest with you.
you
It's like
can't.
not only is the paradigm for technology, setting up a global government, but also that the spiritual shift is also going in full throttle right now. It just seems like everything right now is, as I say, it's like on this racetrack, and they're all just at full throttle. It really is, and especially
Yeah.
spirituality. I remember and they don't listen, and if they did, I don't care. But so my great niece, I think she might have been 9 because she's 11 now. So I'm going to say she was 9, and she was stressing. And so she had to meditate. And I immediately went to my niece and I said, "Can we not do that, please? Like, she doesn't need to meditate. She's not stressing. I mean, it, please just don't do that." So anyway, it fell upon deaf ears, but
Mm.
yeah, I mean, just even then, I mean, it's in our schools now. I mean, at kindergarten, they're meditating, and I'm probably preschool, and our country, so Canada and America, I don't think are too far off when it's coming to
No,
just the devil taking over in every aspect. And to your point, an hour ago when you were talking about how we morphed into so much. I don't mind losing subscribers. I'm known for that. I'm best at losing people because I'm trying to be as honest as possible. But I believe so. This is my thoughts on America being a godly nation, founded upon that. I don't think every single founding father, was a born again believer in Jesus
no,
Christ. They were CNOs. So, with that being said, I believe, because that's why America's not in prophecy, this is just another nation. It's been a nation to catapult so many things prophetically, and just kind of lay the groundwork, I guess, of where we are now. But that's why I really, when you were saying that, like, America is also a huge component in the world we are in today globally when it comes to spiritualism. I mean, you look at the 60s, the sexual revolution, and all of this stuff was happening. But I do believe that we've always been a nation based upon evil principles. We've never really been we might have said God. I hope I'm making sense when I say this, but we might have brought God into the picture, but God really wasn't always front and center. There were always things. I mean, we can go back in history looking at everything from what happened like in New York just when our states began to grow, and just the crime and the rotten politicians. It's always been that way. And it's just progressively gotten worse each decade. It seems like every year, 1980s, something else happened, the 90s, the whole birthing of, the 2000s. So, and it's just going to get worse. That's why I hope the Lord comes back today. But I mean, I can babble on about that as well.
you
So
know,
I don't know. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, America's is an amazing nation.
Mhm.
Canada's an amazing nation. I've never been to England or I've been to Mexico and I've been to the Bahamas. Also amazing nations in many respects. Fantastic people and full of sinners. And in
Yeah.
fact, every fantastic person that I've ever met still is a sinner and needs
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. And
Mm.
America is a nation that had a strong Judeo-Christian ethos, as Canada had an ethos,
Mhm.
because that comes again out of that European, out of that Reformation. There was this Christian influence that's there. You can't,
Mhm.
it's there. But it was an ethic, and so
Yeah.
even if you weren't a Christian, you still followed that moral, ethical framework.
Mhm.
You may have denied Jesus Christ altogether, but you still held to some form of Judeo-Christian ethical framework. Well, we've rejected even just that already, so that's
Yeah.
gone.
Mhm.
It's disappearing very
Yeah.
very quickly. And so I see America the same way as I see Canada, the same way as I see France, the same way I see Russia, any other nation. It's
Yeah.
it's a nation of people. And
Mhm.
and God is very clear in Isaiah chapter 40 what he can thinks about the nations, that they are
Yeah.
literally as a drop in the bucket to him,
That's right. Yeah.
as the
Amen.
fine dust on the scales, the kind of dust that is rolling around underneath your bed, the kind of dust that isn't even going to weigh on the scale, that you
Mm.
can just go blow it away and it's gone. That's how he views America
Mhm.
and Canada and South Africa and
Mhm.
China. Not that they don't have a part to play. They do, because it's part of the human story. But we are all worldwide sinners needing our King Jesus to come.
Yeah.
You know, are there
Yeah.
good people in America? Man, I've got some of the best friends ever in America. I've got people who I consider to be as family. At the same time, I look at my own country, I look at your country, and I'm going, we are a nation that at one time, at the very least, had an ethic, even if that's all it was, but even that's now gone. And so
Yeah.
you were not going to bring that back, I'm afraid. And in a sense, um, I think the harder we try to maybe bring back some of that, the past, so to speak, the
Mhm.
harder the culture pushes against that as
Yeah.
well. So I think we now are finding ourselves in a reversal of the early church time. The early church emerged. If you look at think of the Gentiles in Rome or Athens or in Corinth, they emerged out of a completely pagan context, and then they became followers of Jesus Christ, and the world shook. It changed everything. And now, 2,000 or so years later, we're seeing a reversal.
Mhm.
Now, we're no longer a dominant Christian nation, or not a Christian nation, but a Christian. We don't have a dominant Christian framework. We are now seeing the reversal in the sense that we're becoming a pagan culture,
Yeah.
a pagan worldview. And
Mhm.
so we have to look at the early church and go, okay, how do we handle this? What's the
Yeah.
model?
Mhm.
How do we do what the early church did? And that is basically to be salt and light ambassadors for Christ in a pagan culture where you stand firm in Jesus Christ. And then, like Paul at Athens, at Mars Hill, um, take advantage of those situations, leverage those situations to
Yeah.
be able to proclaim Christ right in the heart, like literally the
Mhm.
heart of a pagan world. I read Acts 17. I read it so often, and it still blows me away. We don't, I think, get the full context. Paul is brought to the Areopagus, which is a shoulder on the Acropolis, where you have the temple to Zeus, the temple to Isis, the temple to Nike. He is standing before a court. These are judges, and he has to give an account to these judges. They are Athens' spiritual gatekeepers in every respect. In fact, this court, the Council of the Areopagus itself, was formed out of an occult experience with one of their deities. And so he's standing in that presence. And behind him, or maybe right in front of him, but it's no more than yards away, are these massive, huge edifices, these incredible temples to these pagan deities. And now that's what he has to stand in front of.
Mhm.
This is who he is facing.
Yeah.
Kim, I can't think of too many things more intimidating than
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
And I see our Christian position now being very similar, where we're going to have to be like Paul and
Mhm.
recognize, okay, we're no longer, we never were Christian. We are
Yeah.
now definitely onist pagan.
Mm.
So how do we bring Jesus Christ into that culture?
Mhm.
And that may even include the worst place of all, your church, the
Yeah.
hardest place to reach,
Mm.
your church.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm. If I had an amen sound effect, I'd do it. I probably do, but I'd have to hunt and peck for it. But I would be like the whole amen on that one because that is true,
yeah. So
you
I mean,
know?
I'm sorry, I'm babbling, but it's just like,
Not babbling.
um, this is really important, and I don't think we've truly grasped how
Mm.
earth-shattering the last 50 years has have been. Um,
Mhm.
it's really tough, especially for generations younger than myself. I mean, I was born in the late 60s, so I mean, I'm a child of the 70s and the 80s, but the revolution that's happened in my little itty bitty lifetime has been
Mhm.
earth-shattering.
Yeah.
Um, I teach a course at Miller College of the Bible on secular trends, secular and pagan trends. And my class I taught just a couple of weeks ago, I had almost 70 students in the class. It was great.
Mm.
And we do 20 hours of this type of teaching,
Mm.
going through the history and just wrestling with all of this. And I just, something wasn't connecting. And I realized that They are post-revolution children.
Mm,
They're already on the other side of the revolution. My generation, I mean, I'm in my mid 50s. I'm kind of the end of the generation that was before the revolution. My generation we were
mm,
in the middle of it all. We didn't even realize it, but 50
yeah.
years is ample time to change the world.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your post on Facebook with the kids. So Sandra, if you want to scroll through, I do want to post this one though because I do pierce the veil. First of all, I love his name,
Mm.
but bold in Christ. So I don't know if it's a male or female, so my bad. But we do have to be bold in Christ for sure. So guys, keep in mind that if you do ask a question, it will be posted. So then Michael, he had said this, and I don't know what that means. So if I can get maybe a little bit more of a description, the women are
Yep.
Eastern Star. Do you know what that means?
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Eastern Star is the women's auxiliary, so it's mostly women, but you can have men who are Masons as well. But it
Mm,
is primarily geared towards wives, daughters, or sisters of a master Mason. And so those are
gotcha.
the qualifications. You just can't join as a woman. You have to have a direct connection into the lodge to be able to apply for membership in the Eastern Star.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay, so Sandra, if you want to scroll through, I guess that feed. So from Michael's down, because I really that's where I kind of stopped, and I don't know if there's any questions, but I guess we can do a quick Q&A right now, and Sandra's already on the ball on that. So there you go.
That's a great question, and it could be. I mean, it's speculation, but it could be. Could the mark link us into something, like an AI computer system, and they're all part of a hive?
Mm,
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. 2018, I was at Burning Man, and I went to a workshop on the question of psychedelics, science, and spirituality. And I'm not going to give the guy's name, but he's a major figure in the crypto space. And a lot of people, by the way, think of Burning Man as just a great, big, huge party. Yeah, it's a great, big party. There's no question. But it is also Silicon Valley's gathering place. And they are all there. There's workshops, there's curriculums, there's lectures. And so I was at this workshop. And in the space of roughly 2 hours, he broke down the coming new civilization into four building blocks, or four new chains that you can connect together. And I'm just giving you the Coles notes, but it fits in a sense with the question. So the first building block is a worldview shift, a worldview change. Out with the Judeo-Christian worldview, in with the mystical, the psychedelic, the divine feminine. In with oneness, out with twoism. That's essentially what that was. That's the first building block. That's essential. If you can't do that, the rest of it falls apart. Second building block is a new social ethos, a new social contract. And that is being played out like in a great big sandbox in real time at Burning Man. That is what we do. It's probably the most dynamic social experiment in the world. And so a new social ethic is being formed right there. So that's block number two, and it will reflect out of block one. Block number three is we need a new economic governance model. And your economic and governance model will reflect block two and block one. And so your ability, let's say, I'm going to throw it back into a Christian context, your ability to buy or sell, your purchasing behaviors will now be reflected upon your worldview. So you think of the social credit system of China. If it doesn't fit the narrative, good luck. You're not going to be able to buy or sell. Same kind of idea. So your buying and your selling will be determined based in many respects on how well you align with the worldview and the new governance model. So how do we then make all this happen globally? What is the mechanism? And as it was explained to us, artificial intelligence. So those four building blocks, if we can fuse them together, the first is a new spirituality. Then the second one is a new social contract, a new norm of how we all live together. Then the third one is a new governance and the economic model. How will we demonstrate that we can work as this new oneness? Well, it's through your purchasing behaviors and through your work, through your economic and your governance
mm,
systems. And then how do we tie all this together to make it happen? What's the management mechanism? Because you need a manager. AI, It was
Mm,
remarkable. I walked out of that workshop with my jaw, I think, dragging 10 feet behind me, knowing that in the room or in the big tent was probably, most of the people that were there I knew were CEOs or
mhm.
corporate heads of major tech developers and tech industries. So it was really a remarkable afternoon. That's the kind of stuff you learn when you go to these places. It's kind of wild.
Wow.
Yeah, but that goes kind of to the question: could AI be this?
Mhm.
Yeah, actually, that's
Mm,
I don't think the speculation. Remember, that is the speculation. I don't think the
right.
speculation is far off. It could be.
Yeah. I love my people. They ask such crazy questions, not crazy in a bad way. Um, so Sandra, did you want me to copy and paste that Rumble? Just give me a thumbs up and I can see you down below. I can just paste that in the comments and that way Carl can see. Oh, she's gone.
Ah, the
Okay, girl.
Rosicrucians.
Excuse
Oh,
me.
the Georgia Guidestones. Oh, wow. Kaboom, right? Uh, for, for those who saw what happened, wow. Yes, from what I understand, yes, I've got some of the literature that was published around when the Georgia Guidestones were first put up in 1980, and there's lots and lots of little links. The fellow was um, it seemed to be connected somehow to Rosicrucianism. There definitely seems to be some linkages that way. Um, and do I think that the global elites had it destroyed? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I think it probably was an act of somebody who was just like, I'm tired of this. Uh, I am tired of this. Kaboom. It had been defaced. It had been vandalized before. I was at the Georgia Guidestones only once, and that was in the year 2000. Not that many people had known about it or had heard about it at that point. I spent an afternoon with my friend Gary Kaw. I remember shimmying halfway up the crazy thing because you could wedge your legs and your back up against each of the stones and kind of wiggle up and wiggle up. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's kind of crazy. And then over the years, it kind of has, especially the last 3 or 4 years, become a bit of a lightning rod. And so I know security cameras were eventually put up, and I think even a fence. But back when I visited, none of that was there. It was just this monument, uh,
Mm,
kind of like, you know, way out from Elwood. It's outside of Elberton, Georgia by a few miles, but kind of like way out in the middle of nowhere. And then I honestly think that somebody just simply said, enough is enough, and said, I'm done with this. I'm done with this globalist vision,
yeah, blew
and
him up.
blew her to smithereens.
Hmm.
At least
All my
blew
time
one
living in
side. Yeah.
Georgia, I never went. So I
Oh,
just
seriously, Kim, you
no,
should
I
have.
never. I know I wanted to, but so do you believe in the conspiracy theories? Would they talk about those Georgia Guidestones?
Like which ones?
Like there's so many where it just came out of nowhere.
No, it didn't come out of nowhere. It
Like the
was
guy who built it, he's I don't know, I don't remember. Like it's very weird with him, like
yeah,
how
yeah.
that all came
It
together.
was all very secretive.
Yeah.
It was shell accounts. Um, uh,
The alien, that was the thing. I couldn't think of it. So not that aliens dropped it, but basically some
mm,
type of extraterrestrial life form dropped these stones in the middle because there was
no,
never
no,
any construction. Nobody witnessed any of that going up.
no. Actually, the quarry that it was hewn from is
Mm,
they know who. Yeah, the in fact the contractor who did it has been interviewed. He was interviewed way before it was ever even a thing in the Christian community.
okay,
Before there was
perfect.
before there was any negative light even showing on it. All of that was out in the open. What was never out in the open was who the backer was, who the individual was, who had the
Mm.
money to have this thing put together. With
George
the
Soros? No, I'm teasing.
no, no, it wasn't that. In fact, the fellow, I think Chris Pinto did a good job in uncovering some of that. He
Mm,
there's he did a good documentary on the Georgia Guidestones, and I think he probably has nailed who the individual was. Um, but yeah, somebody with some money
wow.
and a vision,
Yeah.
who is definitely influenced by Rosicrucian ideas, because there's enough hints in there to say that yes,
Mm,
there's a connection. Um, set up a the bank accounts, and we came to an agreement with this quarry company, and there's Masonic connections there too. It's all there, and then
mm,
built this thing
yeah.
as a testament, almost as almost as and I think this is true. It was meant to be a monument that would survive the apocalypse of humanity after we had nuked each other, because this is built during the Cold War era, hey, the height of the Cold
Mhm.
War, that tension, and that mankind the survivors would kind of rebuild civilization around these new
Wow.
10 commandments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, because the stones are definitely going to keep them safe or do something. I don't know. Kind of like the Denver airport. I'm sure you've been in the Denver
Yeah.
airport,
Yeah, I
right? There's a
have.
lot of conspiracy on that. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking with them stones, like, what are you building a tunnel underneath them?
And to be fair, the murals at the Denver airport and all the symbols there, it's nuts. Like
It's creepy.
I've been through the Denver airport, but I have not been in that wing of it. And every time
Mm,
I've had a connecting flight, it's like, I want to go and check it out. There's never enough
yeah,
time as you run from
yeah,
flight to flight.
yeah.
But it's
I
there.
flew in. I had no idea when I flew in
Okay.
that any of that existed. And then last summer at the pool, I run into two people, again, not saved, and we just had conversation. And anyway, I was just like, what? And then I Googled it, and the horse out front of the airport is even more creepier than the airport. So I'm like, I'm never going to Denver. If I ever have to fly in, just fly me somewhere else. I
So
can't.
we have these remarkable symbols and these remarkable forms of communication all across North America, and actually all across the Western world, pointing back to this esoteric thinking, this esoteric enlightenment. In my province of Manitoba, we have the Manitoba Legislative Building. It's like your state capital.
Mm,
It's a parallel to that, and it is all built around Masonic Rosicrucian lines. In fact, you can take an esoteric tour of the Manitoba Legislative Building, and the main room is 66.6 feet wide by 66.6 feet deep. It's laced with just incredible amount of symbols and alignments that have a spiritual esoteric meaning. So I find it interesting that here we have, I'm going to use your country, America, a nation that has crosses coast to coast. You've got steeples and crosses. You're known as a nation that is Christian that way. Um, and yet at the same time, on the top of your Capitol buildings and on top of some of your most important structures, you've got statues to Greek and Roman deities. Um, I mean, you got a great big one in New York Harbor, Libertas, a
mm,
gift from French Freemasonry. The goddess of liberty.
mhm,
So there's always this. It's interesting. You can't escape that ancient pagan
mm,
pull. Um, whether it's the dome in Madison in Wisconsin, or downtown Indianapolis at the War Monument with Nike Victory, or my goodness, the big one, Athena,
mhm,
massive gold gilded statue of Athena in Nashville, in a full size replica of the Parthenon. I mean, here we are, a nation of churches and
mhm,
crosses, and in our high places, um, these incredible representations to the ancient pagan ideals. And
mhm.
Washington, D.C. itself is loaded with those kinds of symbols. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. To me, all this screams that there is this ancient
Mm,
worldview clash, this battle or tension between, do we worship the creation
mm,
or do we worship the creator?
yeah.
And Kim, we're living in a Romans 1 period right now, but we've always
Mm,
been there. And
mm,
so I literally see, in terms of eschatology, I see that just manifesting itself at a level
mhm.
that we've never seen before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So are there any more questions, Sandra? I don't know. Like I said, I'm not really reading the chat. I do want to say, I think it was Tiffany who said good night. So good night. That's about all that I caught. I am keeping an eye on Rumble, though, just to see if anyone is popping on over there. So that's why I keep looking away. So pardon me for doing that. Oh, here's a question. There you go.
Oh, how
How
do you
do you?
dispose
Oh,
of
there you go.
Masonic?
You got it.
Yeah, how do you dispose of Masonic paraphernalia? Um, you know, Easiest thing, if you actually want to just get rid of it, is put it in the garbage, put it through the shredder, whatever you want to do that way. Is there any kind of special ceremony or anything you have to do? Is there, no, no, no. it's false. It's a false worldview. It's an error. Just dispose of it. If you want to dispose of it, just dispose of it. At the same time, maybe you have a person in your church who is already engaging in an apologetics work or something. Um, or if you know of a good Bible college that actually has a need for maybe sometimes first source materials so that their own students can wrestle through stuff. That was one thing I noted when I went to teach at Miller College. They had the Quran and the Book of Mormon and all these other stuff, but they didn't have a wide selection of material for their own students to use as first sources. So if you can find a good Christian use for it, and that sounds kind of maybe like an oxymoron of sorts, but I mean, I've got a large Masonic library and it was used for a good purpose to expose what it is and to bring that forward. But if you don't want to, and if you can't find somebody that is trustworthy in terms of what to do with the paraphernalia, yeah. If you live out in the country, a burn barrel. Did I say that? Sorry, but you know what I mean. You don't need it. You don't need it.
Yeah. Kind of like when I did, that's the reason YouTube pulled my channel in 2020. I was exposing QAnon. I don't even know if I can still say that name today. I might get a strike. We'll find out when the video was done. But or if we'll just go off air. So but to your point, I would not recommend that book to anyone unless you're doing it for research purposes. And I
Right.
bought that book for research purposes, as I've bought other books when it came to New Age and understanding. Because you can't. This is the whole thing, right? If I want to witness to a Muslim, but I have no idea anything about Islam, I'm going to sound and look like an idiot. So I'm not saying sit around and change your religion, but you do need to have some form of knowledge. It doesn't have to be in depth to a degree, but it has to be where you can have a conversation because you're trying to show them, no, this is the right way. I know you're seeing it this way.
Yes.
Right, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean, I
I,
have some stuff in my bank here.
yeah. I have most of my books in my library are books I would disagree with, and that
Mhm.
includes everything from Rosicrucian and witchcraft material to, I mean, anything almost under the sun that way. Um, and to your point of knowing what the worldview is of, let's say, the Muslim, um, it's important that we have at least a handle, a grasp on the language and what they understand, so that you have a sense of what they're talking about. Sometimes that's important because, I mean, my goodness, every religion has its own terminology, its own lingo. And it seems that everybody has their own Jesus already. And so you got to just kind of, everybody says God. You got to, okay, ask those
Mhm.
questions and
Mm.
even know what questions to
Mm.
ask. There's lots and lots of good Christian material. You don't need to go and build a library of occult literature. You don't need that. There's lots of good Christian material out there to help you learn that. But
Yeah.
if you are engaged as a researcher or you are engaged in that level of study, then you're going to need access to material, especially if all of a sudden like a student, a Bible college student or a seminary student. I mean, that's understood. That's a given.
Mhm.
You can be wrestling with these things, but
Absolutely.
for the average person, yeah, there's good resources, good
Mhm.
resources on what other religions believe and what the occult believes, and
Mhm.
you can use that.
Yeah, for sure. Sandra, is anything else happening in the okay. How in the rabbit hole did you go?
For the
See, the
seven.
reason I weave and bob, just so people are aware, my webcam is literally right in the middle of my
It's
screen. I was talking to
17.
Sandra about this. So back when I first started video, I was all like trying to read stuff. So now where this is popping up, it's like right in the middle. So Kim, how in the rabbit hole did you go for your 17? What does that mean?
I'm
Do you
not
understand
sure.
that?
No,
How did you
17. Oh,
how in the rabbit
uh,
hole?
is this a reference maybe to attending Paganicon back in 17?
I have no
I
idea.
don't know. In terms of the rabbit hole, I've gone down some pretty deep holes.
Well, she's referring to Q. I don't want to say the name
Oh,
anymore.
okay.
That
Oh,
was a
okay.
huge rabbit hole. I guess that's the only thing I can think of, but I don't
Yeah,
understand what she means. Did you do for your 17? Because that's in
yeah,
quotes. I don't
yeah,
know.
exactly.
17th. Oh, I see what I she's brilliant. She's brilliant. She the in the alphabet, what's the 17th letter? It's Q. So how in the
Okay,
rabbit
okay.
hole, right, did you go for?
Oh, I'm sorry, Kim. I didn't even see your first name on
Yes.
that. I didn't realize it was meant for you. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah,
That was
perfect.
Vicky. Vicky's got to keep us on our toes,
I
Carl.
like that.
That's
That's awesome.
Vicky does that. Yes. So
Yes.
I love her. She's you got to weave and bob with her. So that was
Oh,
great. Now I finally got it.
I've got to learn from her. That's good. I like that.
Yes. So I went down that rabbit hole because, again, I might lose subscribers. People became so obsessed with Trump and this movement. And I was really scared because, wow, now we were having an American gospel and the Jesus gospel was leaving America. Our main focus was America, America, Trump, 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 America, America. And I just was like, where are all these evangelicals talking about Jesus? So that's what led me down the rabbit hole. And those are well in the archive. So you're talking 2020. I did probably, I thought The Chosen was long when I did that 10-part series. I feel like QAnon went on for so long. Melissa red pilled. She never red pilled me. I just kept praying for her daily. I'll just say that much. But anyway, Vicky, sorry, that is what led me down the 17th rabbit hole. I like it. Okay, any other I see some other questions, Sandra, up that top. So I'm sure there we go. Okay, bye. She's on the ball, Carl. I mean, I'm just gonna let her roll. That's for you.
Strong delusion. Is this not why people are taking the mark? Um, yeah, I think that is absolutely tied in together. It is this. There will be a. I honestly think the strong delusion is really still connected back to Genesis chapter 3, because that is the beginning of sin. That is the beginning of our, and it really it's the core of what sin is, which is to claim that we will be divine, that we are as God. It is divine identity theft. So I think that the strong delusion that we will see coming will somehow be connected to that. That the whole world is deluded somehow to think that we can be in that same capacity as God. Now, I believe that there's going to be one person or one entity that will take us down that road in a very special way, but the germ of that seed is already there. It's there right since Genesis chapter 3. So I think the strong delusion will be, that's going to be a part of that. Whether that's an alien, I know some people speculated like this might be aliens coming down. Um, Interesting. I've got a large assortment of literature that are channeled alien messages, and they're all saying the same thing. I mean, it's literally the same thing, that you are as gods. You can become your own Messiah. Why wait? That's actually a quote from one of the pieces of one of the channel messages. Or it's all about saving the earth and ecology. And I mean, like, for heaven's sake, you guys came billions and billions of light years away to give me Shirley MacLaine, Al Gore, Karl Marx. Come on. I think I know who you are by your messaging. But I mean, strong delusion. Yes. Yes.
Mm,
So,
absolutely.
and if the mark of the beast may just all of a sudden be that, again, this is more of a speculation, but might be that thing that kind of just cements it, just totally cements it.
Mm.
And now you're part of it and you can't extract yourself from it.
Yeah. And that
I don't,
strong delusion is powerful. I mean, you have to
right,
remember demonic, right? Happened in the Old Testament. I believe we're going to
right.
see so, well, not we, because I'm not going to be here,
But it's a
but
strong delusion.
yeah.
There's something, it's not just your regular, hi, I've been
Yeah.
confused, or
Yeah.
it's not just that, hi, I'm, you know, I was
Mm.
tricked. There's an intentionality to this,
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
intentionality. And I think, I don't think we can quite grasp how deep that intentionality really will go.
Mm.
But I'm convinced, and maybe I'm wrong, but I'm convinced it will connect back to Genesis 3, because in Thessalonia we see that the man of lawlessness sets himself up, proclaims himself to be as God. To me, hello, that's a reliving of Genesis 3. They're like bookends. They're bookends to our
Absolutely.
sin nature, but they're also bookends to history.
Mm. I love that. Okay, Sandra, next question. Miss on the ball.
Mm, I really don't think so. I hesitate to say yes to that. That Masonic paraphernalia or paraphernalia of anything can be essentially demonic in itself. I don't see a biblical, really strong biblical reason to say that demons possess uh, objects. That's more something that we have as Christians through antidote than it is through, let's say, a solid. Can you show me a solid scriptural reference that shows that demons and fuse certain objects? If you're not comfortable with the material, get rid of it for sure. It goes back a little bit to the context of when we were talking earlier. Um, we would be freaked out if you came with me to, let's say, Paganicon, which is held, by the way, in Minneapolis in a hotel, and you walked in as a hotel guest, you probably would be totally freaked out, understandably, because the witches and the pagans are there in their regalia and their dress, and I mean it's pretty wild, and you would feel really uncomfortable. But at the same time, those same people maybe are serving you, at Wendy's or at Target, and we go right through the checkout counter. It doesn't phase us. So sometimes I wonder if we set ourselves up and we have forgotten, or maybe we just haven't grasped the importance of the fact that this is defeated. The demonic world is defeated. It's done. It was defeated. Actually, it never had the power that it claims itself to have, because it is still only a created order. We tend to forget that the supernatural world, the realm of angels, demons, all that we call it supernatural, and it is supernatural because it's beyond our natural, but it's still created.
That's powerful.
God is the only
Mm.
uncreated. So let me just give you a sense of this for myself. And it was a pretty big lesson. I was at a large pagan conference, and I was sitting through a ritual called the marriage of heaven and hell, and I'm documenting this. Um, and I've used this in some of my presentations because I took some pictures. And so you have in this room, which is about 50 or 60 witches, you have a Christian mystic, and he has a circle of power that he is standing in, and he is using theology. In fact, he has a long discourse that's very heavily concentrated on biblical theology to conjure up a very specific demon. On the other side of the room, we have a Luciferian, and he is calling upon Beelzebub, Ashtaroth, and Lucifer to conjure up another very specific
Mm.
demon. And I'm there as a researcher. There's a fly on the wall. And in the first 10 minutes, I'll be honest, there was fear. There was fear rising up in me. There was this sense of, Carl, you kind of got yourself into this. I didn't
Mm.
want to see demons. No, thank you.
Mm.
And as that fear was there, I believe it was the Holy Spirit giving me a reinforcement of his word, when all of a sudden I was reminded that every knee will bow. And it hit me. Every knee will bow. That meant every witch in that room's knees would bow. That means the Christian mystic that was there, who's not a Christian, by the way, his knee bows. The Luciferian's knee bows. Every entity, principality, and power that they acknowledge, all of them bow as well. We bow in love. They bow in judgment. What are you afraid of, Carl?
Mm.
And it just hit me. And fear vanished as I realized I have nothing to be afraid of.
Mm.
Nothing. Every knee will bow to our Lord and Master. Everyone. Now, it's not a comfortable place to be. The world isn't a comfortable place to be. Hello.
Mhm.
But are we courageous, or are we full of fear? And sometimes I think in the Christian world, we scare each other and we scare ourselves. I really would like to. I'm still wrestling through what is a biblical understanding of spiritual warfare, because sometimes we really have attached Hollywood's version
Mhm.
with sometimes really superstition And I think we tend to realize, or tend to forget, that in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, Paul is talking about the strongholds of arguments and the stronghold of beliefs and worldviews. And that is what we battle against. And yes, they may be the doctrines of demons, but they're defeated.
Yeah.
So to me, I'll ask him, I can't say it was a life-changing thing, but it was one of those moments where I went,
Mm.
Hokey Dinah, Carl. It's
Yeah.
real. It is real. But at the
Mhm.
same time, it's defeated.
Mhm.
And fear at that point was gone when all of a sudden, it went from here to here.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Another powerful one.
Well,
Yeah.
when all of a sudden you're in that situation,
Mhm.
eh, yeah, things hit you. And I know a lot of people will say, well, aren't you worried that you might all of a sudden go over to the dark side? Look, the line in the sand is so stark. Like this last Sunday, I taught in my adult Sunday school class a little bit around issues of spiritual warfare. And that was actually a question that popped up. Like, doesn't that this stuff kind of bother you? Aren't you, afraid that you're going to slide over the dark side kind of idea? So my class didn't know, but I had the Satanic Bible um, in a little bag beside me. So I pulled it out and I read a section of the Satanic Bible, and it's so blatant and blasphemous. It's like,
Mhm.
are you going to fall for that? I mean, it's so
Yeah.
obvious. No, no, because it is so stark, in such stark
Mhm.
opposition to truth, that it's actually not deceptive. Now, what's
Mm.
deceptive is maybe Jesus calling
Oh,
or something
amen.
subtle.
Mm.
That's deceptive. This other stuff is not deceptive. They're just blatantly saying, blah, this is what we
Mm.
believe, and this is what we stand for. It's actually not
Yeah.
deceptive. It's a lie,
Mm.
but it's open. They don't hide it.
Wow.
So, I mean, those are the things I'm just speaking out loud. These are the things I
Mhm.
wrestle with, because it's like I've been in this, I've been in the midst of this for a long time.
Yeah.
And you're constantly learning and wrestling with it constantly. It doesn't end, and it never will end
Mhm.
until we're in glory, right?
Absolutely. And you had said the comment a couple of times, and I really agree with you on that because, for instance, if we are, at a Target or, as you said, a McDonald's, and I know even me living in major cities, I lived in Nashville. Actually, I took pictures on the Parthenon building, but so very nice building. I'm not gonna lie, it's really pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But so then I lived in Atlanta for many, many years. So even that, if you're in a major city, you're still every time Comic-Con would come, you would see these people dressed in really crazy attire. And at Peachtree City Mall, during my lunch hour, I would walk there because I used to work for the devil, CNN. So I would walk from the CNN Center to Peachtree during my lunch hour. Then Trump got elected and God moved me, but his timing was perfect because there's no other state I'd rather be in than Florida. So I digress. But even engaging with some people from Comic-Con, same principle, so we do
Yeah,
engage with people day in and day out. And I think, and I'm sure you'll agree with me on this. I think if someone is a babe in the Lord, none of us would recommend research like this because they're still
exactly.
on the milk. If you're knowing and you're truly walking with the Lord and you know the Bible and you really understand the deception of Jesus calling, right? You're not questioning anything. Then I do, because again, we can't reach the lost if we're not in the lost community sometimes. I think
Right,
we become Christians and we sit in this bubble like, I'm just going to sit here in this lane and I'm never going to witness to anyone because I'm now a Christian. And I'm thinking, but we were all lost. Like, I'm glad nobody had that mindset for
right,
all of us coming to the Lord. So,
right,
but
right.
I really agree with that.
I, I think yes, and you're absolutely right. You're young in Christ. Even if you're mature in Christ and it still bothers you, then
Hmm.
don't. But at the same time, also don't hide your light. Um, to your point of knowing the world around you, we're called to be ambassadors. I love the language Paul uses when he talks about us as being ambassadors for Christ. He uses other language that are metaphors, like running the race and being a soldier for Christ and being a farm laborer. He uses those metaphors, and you see that in his writing. But then he talks about us being ambassadors, and it's not metaphorical. It is what you are.
Mhm.
So, what does an ambassador do? Have you ever rubbed shoulders with anybody from an embassy? I've been fortunate. I've done a lot of that. I've had that opportunity.
Mhm.
Years and years ago, I was at a meeting in Chicago with the U.S. ambassador to Saudi Arabia. He had just been appointed by George Bush, and he was outlining what his task entailed and what he had to do to prepare himself to be an ambassador. And so, more or less, I walked out of there and I distilled what he said into Christianese language, because what he said really hit me. It really hit me because he explained what an ambassador does. First of all, in terms of Christianese language, you, Kim, you, and every person who's listening to this, who's a believer in Jesus Christ, you are literally the legal and the lawful representative of Jesus Christ.
Mhm.
That is what you are. You are the legal and the lawful representative. You are the official representative of Jesus Christ, first and foremost. Just like an ambassador
Mhm.
is the official representative of a nation. An ambassador has to subvert your interest to the interest now of your government, to the interest of your king. You change what is of your interest. You change your perspective to make sure it aligns with his perspective. That's what you do. And then, as he explained to us, an ambassador takes the time to study the culture you find yourself in. In his situation, it was Saudi Arabia. So he had to know Arabic history, the culture. He studied the governance of it. Governance of it. He studied the economic aspect. He studied it all. He was in the world of Saudi Arabia, but he was not of the world of Saudi Arabia.
Mhm. Mhm.
And he did it so that he could properly represent his government and his government's interest to Saudi Arabia. Hmm.
Mhm.
That is what we do, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
I like that. That's a great
yeah.
analogy.
Oh man, to me,
Yeah.
it was again, that was one of those moments where if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have grasped what it
Mm.
means to be an ambassador. I'm like, okay, yeah, you are
Mm.
the official legal representative.
Yeah,
Wow, I can't think of a higher calling than that.
I know.
Full stop, period.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow. It's a
So
lot.
to me, yeah, it's a lot, but boy, at the same time, that should empower and give us courage, right? Speaking
Mhm.
as we talked right in the very beginning of the show, courage.
Yeah,
How do we gain that
absolutely.
courage? We gain that courage by knowing who our king is,
Yeah.
and then our position with that king,
Yeah.
and then having a knowledge so that we can be in the world but not of the world.
Yeah. Just like Pierce said before, pierce the veil, right? Be bold in Christ.
Right,
We have to be bold. I mean, and then with that boldness, I mean, the courage, I mean, it all just plays in together.
right,
It
right,
really does. That's why I always say I'm not everyone's cup of tea, because I ruffle feathers. I call out, I expose falsehoods for a reason. That's the lane God has me in. And I want to be
right.
an ambassador. I have to, because people are so deceptive.
And being
Today.
right, and being an ambassador means being diplomatic. So
Mm,
there's ways of doing this and ways
I'm
of
not so
not.
diplomatic.
Well, okay, so here's an example. But you're not Westboro Baptist Church.
No.
Okay, see, that is not diplomatic.
Yeah.
Being bold and calling things out and saying things how they are, that can be diplomatic.
Mm,
Truth and grace come together.
mm,
But to stand and to reinforce the negative stereotypes they already have of Christians is actually counterproductive. This is one of the things that when we go to Burning Man that we've always been hesitant in going, because one of the things we don't want the Christian community to do is come there with bullhorns and picket signs, because it's not effective. But what is effective in that setting is having conversations, truthful conversations.
mhm,
And that's what you're talking about, a truthful conversation, which
yeah,
can turn people off because
mhm,
there's a boldness to what is true, right?
yeah,
But yeah, we're not having the approach of being objectively jerks to try to
correct.
push a point.
Yeah. I
Um,
always say if I'm making you uncomfortable without yelling, that means you're being convicted,
Bingo.
you
Awesome.
know?
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Very much,
mhm,
I don't want to win the argument and lose the person. I want to make sure that the person
correct.
walks away with all of a sudden questioning the argument, questioning his own
Absolutely.
argument.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
there's, I'm a huge seed planter. I will tell anyone about Christ, but and I think that's why I'm in this lane, because God has used me not only, like I said before, within the LGBT community, he's also used me. And I don't know everything about New Age, but I can definitely talk to someone. I know Sandra and I were talking about this the other day. So I know, I'm not saying I don't practice yoga. I need for people to hear that when I say that I don't practice yoga,
Mhm.
but I do like some of the yoga moves. It's good for stretching and stuff. So what I'm saying is this. Please hear me on this, because sometimes people don't listen. I Let's just say hypothetically, it's a warrior two pose. Okay. Um, I am not meditating. I'm not just staying in that pose. I'm fluid with the motion. I'm using it as a workout. But there are some poses that I will never touch. So for me, if I'm just doing like a good morning salutation, I would never do that anymore, because I know what is behind some of those poses. You know, so if it's like just a stretching mechanism, and some of the warrior poses I don't do either, because I know what's behind those. But that's what I'm saying. So I kind of cherry pick some of that stretching within yoga, because I've noticed that when I don't stay on flexibility, my body doesn't. And I don't know how to, there's nothing else out there that really can help my body. So I say, and I've told people, if you can show me something, but then I also mix Pilates in that too. And everyone's like, well, that's not good either. And I'm like, I just can't win for losing. But I'm saying all of that because I have been down roads, but I think sometimes we take our human aspect, we act like we are these super spiritual people, and we can never be on that common ground with people. And that's where I think Christians lose people, because we're either overly legalistic. And for instance, I had a friend of mine, she knows the Bible. I don't know, I think better than God sometimes. And I'm using that sarcastically, but she'll start like quoting scripture to people who don't have any idea what she's talking about. And I'm like, okay, you're kind of, they don't know what you're saying. Like, that's great
Right.
that you know that knowledge, but your
Right.
audience doesn't know that knowledge. So I just think we need to come on that normal level with people, meet them right where they are.
Hmm.
Um, and I would encourage people, even on this feed or sharing this video. And I know we've been here for a while, but I would encourage you guys to step out of that box of Christianity. And again, our job is to seek the lost. That's what our job is for. There's no other job. I mean, praise and worship's great as a Christian, praying and reading your word daily, and all of the Christianese terms are great. But if we're not out there actively seeking the lost, I want to be a watchman. I don't want anyone's blood on my hands, as Ezekiel 33 says. So, do you have a
Yeah.
time for a few more questions? I guess we'll put a few more up.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. But
Um,
just to the
yeah.
comments that you were making,
Hmm.
sometimes we forget that we all are having a human experience.
Yeah.
Now, the difference is either you're having a saved human experience or you're not saved. But we
Mm,
still all have a common human experience. And my buddy Bob Worley, who's my partner at Burning Man, he expresses it this way when he's talking to burners. He tells them, he says, "Look, you are my brother or my sister in Adam, because you are, every one of you.
mm,
But my hope, my desire, my prayer is that you become a brother or a sister in Christ."
mm.
And I think that's a good way of looking at it.
Oh, that's good.
You know, so we
Mm,
can't forget that human side, and this is why it's at least this is for me. I find it's more effective to have conversations with people and asking questions. Always
mhm.
ask questions, like
Yeah.
loads and loads of questions, um, because questions, number one, especially asking questions of themselves, let them speak, because then you get to know them as a person. They're not a target;
Mhm.
they're a person.
Yeah.
And then you share. So an example, and it was quite stark, was this weekend at the virtual burn. There was a discussion that was given by a couple who were telling everybody about their marriage ceremony at Burning Man and how they went about it. And there's maybe 20 of us or 30 of us in this virtual room. And a guy walked in And I've firmly believed he had good intentions, well intentions. And he walks in, and it was during the Q&A period, and people had questions about what were the complications of setting up your marriage at the burn, and blah blah blah, those kind of relevant questions to the topic. And so he had a question, his hand raised, he had a question, but it wasn't a question. He just stood there and said, and he was very sincere in it. That's not the issue, but he was very sincere, saying, Jesus loves you. And he gave this basically a verbal tract about how Jesus loves every one of you. And everybody was nodding. That's very nice. It's very nice. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm Jesus's bud, this kind of thing. And then he was gone. And I thought to myself,
Mm.
is this effective? I don't know. Did it plant a seed? I don't know. If it's effective, then how come we just don't walk into, let's say, the Esso gas station or the White Castles, and
Mm.
stand in line, as everybody's standing in line, and we just go in to blurt out a gospel track and run away.
Mm.
Or maybe it's more effective, and I believe it's more effective to maybe come alongside and have those conversations as a person,
Yeah.
instead of just being a soundbite that is there and gone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I To be
Mhm.
honest, I'm not an evangelist by nature. That's not something that just spills out of me. Um,
Mhm.
and that's one of the things that my experiences of Burning Man have been really instrumental in forcing me now to take this
Mhm.
one step further, and having those conversations intentionally, and realizing that more often than not, it's just having those conversations, asking questions,
Yeah.
being honest and saying I don't know the answers sometimes,
Mhm.
and even crying with the guy as you realize
Mhm.
just the level of hurt that's there,
Mm.
because they're your brothers in Adam. They're
Yeah.
your sisters in Adam. We're
Mm.
all having that common human experience.
Yeah.
But now we want to go one step further and be brothers and sisters in Christ, and have the
Yeah,
human experience
absolutely.
that is the saved experience,
Mm.
not the condemned experience.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
that was really good.
just stuff
Mm.
that you wrestle with, right?
For sure. That's why, like those street preachers, I feel like sometimes they do more harm than good. Because they're just condemning people. I remember
Yeah.
when I was backslidden, yeah, I was still saved. I do believe once saved, always saved. But I remember walking in, especially to some of my perverted little clubs, and you would just see them just screaming at people. And then
Mm,
I'd say mean things to them, like what they're doing behind the scenes when nobody's watching and you're screaming at me. And I wasn't nice because they actually, or like the people shouting at, a 15-year-old ready to walk into an abortion clinic, shouting at her that she's a murderer. You don't know what she's going through.
right.
You don't know what's putting her in that situation. So instead of climbing over the fence with your bullhorn, ready to fall from the tree, why not approach her with love? And maybe she wouldn't go into that abortion clinic. So I don't know. I've always been that way. And I think because there's so many religious people, legalistic church folk, as I call them, hypocrites, to be honest with you, CINOs. um, I've been jaded a lot, being raised in the church, being around church folks since I was 5. I've seen a lot, heard a lot. But when I finally came back to the Lord, 12, this year will be 13 years ago. And I'm lying, 12 years ago. I finally took my eyes off of man and their imperfections, and I realized that God uses my imperfections to reach the lost. And I'm not ashamed. The devil put me in such severe condemnation of my years of being who I was. But that's the key word. It's was. It's not who I am now. And God just uses those imperfections. But I talk to people just on a level of, I understand. I can't I'm never gonna, like I always say, these are my sayings, Carl. You can't scold a blind man for not being able to see. You can't,
Right. Right.
and it's my job. I'm not gonna love them into hell either. I'm gonna be direct and forward, and Jesus is the only way. But
Hmm.
it's not like I just start the conversation with that. I start the conversation with normal dialogue, and then I morph into, hey, I mean, I remember when I lived in Atlanta, or oh no, that was here. And I don't ever tell people this because it's no one's business, but God opened the door for me to witness to a young college kid who was a Muslim. And I was an Uber driver for, always did that part-time for extra cash. And I always prayed, God, put whoever you want in this car. So normally people, always sit in the back. But
Mhm.
for some reason, and I never felt uncomfortable. I don't let people sit in the front with me because I don't want to shank you with my knife. So, but I never felt uncomfortable. So this young boy, he gets in the front seat, and we just started having dialogue and talking. And then he mentioned, that he was a Muslim, and I said, I'm familiar with Islam to a degree. And I said, and then, just started talking about that. Then it led into, I mean, we sat, I took the, I went offline on Uber because the conversation, he didn't get out of the car. I never made him feel uncomfortable. But then he was asking, like, well, wait a second. I don't understand. I thought all religions, don't you pray though? Don't you have to read, your Bible? And I'm like, well, yes and no. So I said, if I never prayed a day in my life after I became born again, I'm still going to heaven. I might not have crowns waiting for me. My heavenly works are going to burn. I said, but Jesus doesn't operate like Mohammed operates.
Mm.
And he was just he was captivated knowing that, what do you mean you're not working? I'm working. Like, there's certain things that I can't do. Like during Ramadan, there's certain things that they just cannot do.
Right.
And he's like, so like, you don't have any of that? No. Like, so that was the breaking point. So I asked him, can you, because you have to remember, a lot of these religions, if their parents find out, they'll disown them. In other
Right.
cases, they can hurt them physically. So I asked him, being that he's in college, I said, are your parents here local? Where, and he told me where they were. And I said, can you load on your phone a Bible app? And he said, yeah, I guess I can. And I said, well, just open the book of John. Just do me that favor tonight when you get into your dorm. Just open the book of John. Just download the app, go on your computer, then delete your history, and just sit there and just read as much as you can. Hopefully you can get through the entire book, and you can read about Jesus and then compare Jesus
Mm.
to Muhammad. And then
Yes.
at that point, he said, I'm going to do that. And then when he got out, he leaned, because I rolled down the window. I knew he had to tell me something. So I rolled down the window, and he got emotional. And he said, do you know you're the first person that I've ever spoken to where you didn't think I was going to blow you up in your car? He said, you
Wow.
spoke to me like a real human being. He said, when you
Yeah.
see Muslim, you think terrorist. He said, you told me about Jesus and you didn't see me how other people see. And that just really hit home for me as well. Because that's
Yep.
another thing, right? We judge immediately on a witch, a Wicca, someone who's gay. We automatically say, you're too bad. I can't witness to you.
Right. Right. I
So I
know.
didn't mean to babble on that. And I know we
No,
want to
no,
get to
no,
some
no,
questions.
no,
So,
but
but
I do get it because I've had that
yeah.
same experience with people. I've never had a non-Christian upset that I go to Burning Man or to, some of the other places I go to,
Hmm.
but I've had a lot of Christians who've been quite upset, and I've
Yeah.
had a lot of Christians who've said they're going to burn anyways.
Hmm. Mm.
Why are you going? I'm like,
So,
are you kidding me?
mm,
We're supposed to be ambassadors. Hello.
yeah.
That means
Yeah.
we're in a mission field. We're in a foreign field. Hello.
Hmm.
I know. I
Mm.
honestly, Kim, I don't get it. I don't get that. But
Yeah. I mean, I know where I was going to burn too. You were going to burn,
yes,
you know?
yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's a really poor outlook to have,
right.
that they're not reachable. There's no one. The thief on the cross, people would think that he was expendable as well.
I know.
And he did
Exactly.
nothing spectacular, but just knew that that was the son of God,
Right.
you know?
Exactly.
And that
Yeah.
was back then the scum of the earth. Can I say that? I don't know, scum of the earth. But that's
Yes.
what I'm saying, right? Like, they were thieves. That's why he was crucified.
Right.
So
Right.
I don't know. I do have a problem with that, of people who don't want to minister to lost people, because lost people are the ones who need Jesus,
Yes.
you
You
know?
did. You did too at one point.
Hmm. Of course. I remember
And
my
we.
mom used to tell the saying, remember, sin will take you further than you want to go. It'll keep you longer than you want to stay, and it'll cost you more. She used to tell me that saying all the time. I'm like, Mom, that's not in the Bible. She's like, it's in Diane's Bible, or whatever she would say with her Brooklyn accent. Like, no, it's in, I'm just going to keep telling you this until you come home, my prodigal. So I'm like, I like my sin. It's great. It's a great place to be.
uh, and in terms of even just the bigger picture of looking at things like global governance and United Nations and world order, and interfaithism, which itself is a form of all of that as well. But let me tell you, when I go to the Parliament of World Religions, it's all about how we save the world through our politics. All of these things that seem to be different components are all still speaking about the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is this: do we trust God or do we trust man?
Yeah.
Because every one of these goes back to trusting man.
Mm. Yeah.
All of it ends up being a theological question. Who is it that we
Mm.
trust?
Yeah.
You know?
I agree. I need to get you back on seriously if you want to, maybe like sometime in April or May.
Yeah.
Um, but I want to talk about that parliament thing. That was a big thing that I read in the book too that really
Yep.
captivated my attention. But I felt like that should be like a whole episode because there was so
Oh
much
yeah.
meat there.
There's so much stuff.
A lot. So
So
we'll schedule, I guess, outside of this. I'll
yeah,
Facebook
that'd
you
be
and just give
great.
me your availability.
Yep. Beginning of May, I'm hopefully going to be going to a psychedelic conference
Mm.
in Western Canada. There's a great big one happening, huge one happening
Hmm.
this summer in June in Denver. I would like to go to it because it's the world's largest, but
Wow.
I got to first of all wait to see if Biden even opens the border,
Mm.
and then even if it does, it's probably out of my league. But
Mm.
so yeah, psychedelics, the question that you had asked earlier, I think is super super important in
Yeah.
terms of interfaithism. The next big interfaith event that's taking place, the next huge one is this summer in Chicago. It
Mm.
is the next round of the Parliament of World Religions. Seriously, if you are interested in walking 10 feet and running into somebody of a different faith who is willing to talk about their faith, that is a place you can do that. In fact, there's a whole group that
Mm.
engages in what I would call guerrilla evangelism. And there's nowhere on earth where you're going to find such diversity. You'll end up running into people
Wow.
from Cao Dai to Sufism, from the Temple of Isis to the Baha'is. It's all there.
Mm. I
And
got one
so,
of those right across the street from me.
okay,
A
yeah. So
Baha'i, yeah.
yeah, so I mean that's happening this summer, and this year's interfaith, the interfaith parliament is going to really be focusing on human rights and human dignity, and already the flavoring is, unless you fit in that leftist globalist narrative, you are a threat to democracy. That's already the flavoring I'm seeing coming out in some of the preparatory materials.
Mm.
Like, okay, I know where this is kind of going. And then in terms of global governance, the political side, there are some events happening this year of importance, but the big one is next year's World Summit on the Future, which was put in place largely by those involved in the World Federalist community.
Mm.
There's a big preparatory event happening this March in New York. Can't go because thank you, Biden, for locking up your borders to those of us who are unjust. But
Mm. That's
we're
crazy that they're still doing that though.
oh, I know it's just vindictive politics.
Mm.
But
Mm.
yeah, I'm hoping to at least get in on the virtual side of that event, which is there. So,
Yeah.
Kim, the world is changing fast.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's what's happening. The world is changing right in front of our eyes,
Yeah.
and we are seeing those forces of change.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so, while all of that's happening, front and center, foremost, the most important part of it is do you trust Jesus
Yeah.
or do you trust man? Because if you trust man, then all the rest of what we've just described, like from
Mm.
interfaithism to global governance, um, you might as well just go along with it
Yeah.
because that is the ultimate trust in man.
Mm.
And at some point, there's going to be a man, the man of lawlessness, who
Mm-hmm.
says,
Mm-hmm.
"Trust me."
That's right. And
And
many will.
yep, and it's just going to be. I think it's just going to be an extension, carried
Yeah.
out to its final degree
Mm-hmm.
for what man has been doing since Genesis 3.
Absolutely. So what we'll do, because you've been my longest podcast ever, just so you know, because we're almost at the
Seriously?
3 hour mark. I don't know if you knew that or not,
Oh
but I feel
wow!
like
Look at
we're in a
that.
yeah, I feel like we're in a Joe Rogan podcast. So this is awesome. Less the pot, cigars, and liquor. So what we're gonna do, because I did see some questions. So Sandra, we're gonna do rapid fire Q&A, and then so we'll just make it at the 3 hour mark. And so we'll do 15 minutes rapid fire. So Sandra, put the question up and then Carl will answer. And then we'll go, hopefully we'll get the ones that will remain and then we can Be blessed. And what I would love for you to do, Carl, before is if you can close us out in prayer as well on this
Mhm.
podcast. But anyway, so rapid fire, there you go.
Yes, AI and horses. How do horses and AI? Yeah, you're right. Battle of Armageddon is fought on horses. That's how we see it. How all of that plays out, I don't know. But um, but we do see in Scripture that that is the case. So yeah, what happens between now and then that maybe changes the world in such a manner that maybe by that point there is again some type of huge shift, some huge catastrophe that changes things that we just can't see at this point in time. I don't know. That's a good question though, and I wish I had a great answer. I wish I could just like here it is, but I don't know. That's speculative. Do you have an answer, Kim?
I do not. I'm just
No.
listening to you. I do not. That was a great question. I love my people.
Fantastic question. St. Louis Gateway Arch. I don't know. That's another good question. I've been to the arch. It's kind of cool. Um, wasn't really that terrible keen on the east side of St. Louis, but whatever. Uh, some pretty sketchy neighborhoods I went through.
Yeah,
But
my
yeah,
sister's boyfriend
sorry,
is
Michael.
from that side.
I don't know, but that's a great question. Michael, would you be interested in doing some homework and trying to find out if there's any significance that way? I'd be curious. These are great questions because I don't know the answers. What are your thoughts on the Saudi? Oh, Neom. Yes, the line. Oh, what a crazy project. There's what, 6,000 pieces of heavy equipment right now? Like right now, building this thing. Um, is it going to be done? I don't even think they're going to be able to. I don't think they're going to pull it off. Okay. Maybe they'll pull off sections of it. Will they pull off all what in 100, what is it, 100 miles or 150 miles long, the line? But one thing that is, I think, going to be really remarkable with the line and Neom is all of the technologies that will emerge as they are faced with the challenges of trying to build this thing. Because as you work to build something, especially as technical and complex as a city that is a line that long, that high, what is it supposed to be? As high as like what the Empire State Building, all lined with glass on either side. Just the incredible engineering complications and challenges that will come with it will force, and I in a way I think this is maybe part of it, it will force new technologies to emerge. It will force new answers. And so yeah, it includes AI, it includes all kinds of very wild and incredible technological concepts, and the just the engineering behind it is massive. And I know that it's already uh, being a kind of a petri dish for all sorts of other ideas to percolate out of. Um, I see that as actually being more relevant than if they're going to complete the line. I don't know if they'll actually complete it. I don't know if they have the technical ability to complete it, or even the economic ability to complete it. That's an interesting question. But yeah, watch it. Just watch it and watch the stuff that maybe comes out of it. Uh, I think that's going to be very telling. Fascinating project though, really fascinating. Ooh. Hmm.
Apparently, they're keeping you on
Yeah,
your toes right now.
yeah. No, that's a great question too. Um, I think there is that possibility. I think there's a. I believe, and I don't have uh, proof, evidence in a biblical, even a historical way, but there's just something about the fact that from culture to culture, from century to century, and even from millennium to millennium, those ancient gods and goddesses from the pagan past always seem to return in a different way. We go from Isis to Diana to it just the personality or the characteristic remains while the name changes. And so there's something about the fact that as our world becomes more paganized, we more readily want to be in touch with that ancient pagan past. And I'll tell you that absolutely conclusively from spending time in the Wiccan community. There is an absolute interest in those ancient gods and goddesses. That really forms so much of the backbone, especially in terms of reconstruction, some of the reconstructions of modern paganism. So there's a longing or a desire for that return. And they don't actually make any bones about that. So to me, there's just something about the continuation, historical continuation of that ancient pagan past that I think will play into our future. In fact, the idea of oneness is an ancient, you can call it an ancient future worldview. And all that the ancient gods and gods were physical manifestations of spiritual principalities and powers that had some connection back to the natural world. So you were a god or a goddess of fertility or sexuality or of wine or of commerce or of ocean travel or of fish. There was always the ancient gods and goddesses always had this connection back to a natural process. And so it's interesting how as we're moving forward, even in terms of our politics, and I've got to read this to you because I think this kind of fits in with this whole conversation. Haha. I gotta read you the closing lines from here we go. The closing of the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, the 1992 Rio Earth Summit, because it kind of fits this whole thing, this quest or this desire to reconnect to these ancient pagan deities and these ancient ideals. So this is Boutros Ghali, the United Nations Secretary General, as he's winding up the Rio Earth Summit, which gave us Agenda 21, the conventional climate change, conventional biodiversity, all of this stuff. And in his last moments, he says this: I should like to conclude by saying that the spirit of Rio must create a new form of good citizenship. After loving his neighbor as the Bible required him to, post Rio man must also love the world, including the flowers, birds, and trees, every part of that natural environment that we are constantly destroying. Over and above the moral contract with God, over and above the social contract concluded with men, we must now conclude an ethical and political contract with nature, with this earth to which we owe our very existence and which gives us life. To the ancients, the Nile was a god to be venerated, as was the Rhine, an infinite source of European myths, or the Amazonian forest, the mother of forests. Throughout the world, nature was the abode of the divinities that gave the forest, the desert, or the mountains a personality which commanded worship and respect. The earth had a soul. To find that soul again, to give it new life, that is the essence of Rio.
Mm,
Yes, there is your ancient pagan past wrapped right into our
mm.
future and our present. So, how does it all play out? And maybe even to the question of aliens and all that. I don't know, but I don't think we can discount the fact that we have millennium of interest in those ancient pagan deities. In fact, so much so that it forms the heartbeat
Mm,
of the politics at the United Nations Rio Summit, which
mm,
gives all of us climate change and all the environmental hot buttons that we deal with today. It's a spiritual thing. Interesting. So in my country, Canada, we have a carbon tax. I don't have a say whether I pay my carbon tax or not. If I put gas in my car, I pay a carbon tax. I look at that literally as my coerced tithes and offerings
mm.
to the pagan deities and the worldview that that represents, because I know the history of our carbon tax. I know it emanates directly out of what I just read
Yeah.
from Boutros Ghali's mouth.
Mm,
So I'm sorry, we cannot divorce spirituality, theology, and politics. And I think it comes full circle. Again, back to the question of are we like the early church? Just yeah, we are. Just a reversal of it. Now, instead of coming out of the pagan world as Christians, we are entering the pagan world.
mm. Very
So
true.
don't know if that really helps, but I think it's a really big question.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Very good question. So, did your presence interfere? Is that what that says? With their attempts to conjure up their demons?
I don't think so.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah, that was at the marriage of heaven and hell. I don't think so. I don't know, but I don't think so. It may
Mm.
have. It may have. But I have no conclusive proof. I don't even have biblical proof that's what happens. I mean, I've had a lot of people say or ask me, did you feel the darkness, or did they feel your presence? I think that sometimes those feelings do exist. Sometimes I think we set ourselves up with feelings, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any biblical reference to those kinds of feelings or those kind of experiences. I see Paul dealing with a girl who follows him around for 3 days, demon possessed. Finally, he's just sick of it and just deals with it
Yeah.
and moves on. You know, so I don't know.
Mm.
I don't think it interfered with their attempts. I prayed. I definitely was
Yeah.
in prayer because I didn't want to see demons.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Yeah.
Um, no, thank you. I still don't want that. Not at all. Go away. You're defeated. But no. So yeah. Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't. I trust God though. I do trust God that way.
Yeah.
Oh, Chat GPT. Oh, crazy stuff. Hey.
Right.
Oh, crazy stuff.
Angela, a friend of mine, so she had inboxed me, and I did and just for the 30 seconds, like at first, and then I got into it a little bit more, and I'm like, okay, this is intense.
Oh yeah,
So yeah,
it's
speak
crazy,
upon it.
crazy.
Right.
So Chat GPT, for those who don't know, it's an AI, text-based AI. Type whatever you want in, questions, or give it parameters, and in seconds it'll spit out stuff. When I was at Miller College, one of the students, I'm not sure if he's going to do it now, wanted to do an essay using Chat GPT, specifically asking it Christian worldview questions to see what kind of response he would get, and then compare and contrast those Christian worldview questions with his Christian saved friends from his church to see, okay, how close in alignment do we have. And I'm not sure if he's going to do it or not. He's still working on his essay. We've been going back and forth, but yeah, here we have this incredible AI technology that in seconds will give you an incredible printout of almost any topic. So there's some big implications of, especially for pastors and let's say even students. Do you need to write a sermon, or can I just like punch in Romans 1 and just say, give me a an 8-minute sermon with 3 outline points based off of Romans 1? Poof, there it is. Some big implications. Here's another implication, historical implication. So with AI generated art, which there's some pretty cool AI generated art, I must say. But I was watching during this last year's Burning Man event. I couldn't go again because of Mr. Biden. But I was watching. Sorry, I just
You have a
so.
lot of love for him. I get
Oh
it.
man, and Trudeau. Oh
Yes.
well.
All right. They're both
Anyways,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
they're same people.
They all
One
are.
has different color hair than the other. That's all.
I
But
know.
so, anyways, it was interesting watching
Except for
around.
when he wears blackface all the time, but we won't go there.
Yeah, I know. Oh, what a show! What a show!
Sorry, I
Just
snorted because
that's
he's
okay.
too funny with the blackface.
It's just crazy.
Oh, it is.
I wish it wasn't serious. Just then we could just laugh and whatever. Anyways, so back to Burning Man this last year.
Yes.
Um, People were punching out AI generated images of what was happening on the playa at Burning Man. And there was comments all over social media about, oh, wow, I can't believe the art. And I can't believe this is just amazing what they're doing now. And I'm looking at this stuff going, because I know it. I've been there a number of times now. I know it. I'm going, hogwash. This isn't real. But anybody who didn't know it was already accepting it. And I know the individual who did it. There's another individual, a longtime burner, that was putting out AI generated images of Burning Man from 1963. Very convincing pictures. And he was also then doing AI generated images from Burning Man 1920s. Again, very convincing pictures. That looks like an authentic history. But there was no Burning Man in 1963. It didn't start until 1986. and it didn't become what it is today until realistically only like 25 years ago or so. So all of a sudden, all the comments were like, "Oh wow, is that incredible?" I realized very quickly how AI generated art gave us a historical reality that didn't exist. Are we now at that point where we can change historical perceptions and what is historically true or false based on AI generated art, coupled with a
Mm,
complete narrative that we can build with Chat GPT? Incredible. Always it has massive historical questions. This is something I've been wrestling with a few different guys going, the ability to rewrite history is there if you know how
mm,
to do it right. And nobody's going to question it unless you are a student of history. And none of us are anymore. We've got lots of knowledge because we're all tapped in digitally, but we have no
mm.
historical context. We don't have wisdom.
Um, for you to silence me, that's wonders, because I'm never one to be silent. And so I'm sorry there's a hush right now on this, but
I mean,
you
it's
just
pretty
spoke
wild.
volumes on that. Yeah,
It's pretty wild. That's my concern. Not even so much, is it stupid art or is it good art or whatever?
mm,
That's not the point. The point is we can rewrite history, or at least
sure.
our perception of history.
We've seen that happen a lot in
Right.
2020.
Right. And if we can rewrite our perceptions of history,
Mm,
then we can do lots of things.
mm.
Yeah. Because we react on issues that are either real or perceived, but we all react. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyways,
Mm,
it's a thought. It really is.
mhm,
I think we're going to run into some incredible ethical, historical, social questions as we wrestle through how far do we allow our involvement with AI to now reshape narratives and even build narratives that never existed,
mhm,
because we can
mm.
do that.
Yeah, AI is definitely a realm,
Mhm.
it's crazy.
Yep.
So I think we may have one or two more questions, and then I'll have you close us out in prayer.
Yep.
Here's your question.
Sure. What Burning Man are we talking about? Okay, no problem. I always make the assumption that people know what Burning Man is, but I realize that's not accurate, and probably good. So Burning Man is a massive gathering that happens in northern Nevada, out in the Black Rock Desert. And so for the space of roughly 8 days, people come together, they gather at this event. I'm going to say we because I'm there, and I've been there during build week, and we literally build a city. And I'm not kidding. We build a city of 80,000 people, with sometimes multi-story structures. It has its own airport, its own FAA approved airport. It has its own zip code. It has its own medical camps, and it's got even competing newspapers. It has its own radio station, and 80,000 people converge. And it's difficult, super difficult to get a ticket. Silicon Valley all arrives. This is Elon Musk's playground. In fact, he introduces Tesla Roadster not to a car show in Milan or New York or Toronto. The first place it was publicly introduced was actually a mock-up of it was at Burning Man, and it was parked right by the man. And so, why it's called Burning Man is in the middle of this great big city, and it's configured as a big letter C. In the middle of that is a huge human effigy, a massive human figure. And the place is loaded with art, incredible art, stuff that will blow your mind.
Mhm,
And then at the end of the week, they burn the man to the ground, and that's why he's called Burning Man. Just outside of the man, further out from the city, is their temple, and they'll have a big, big temple. The structures are big. 2018, the temple was a huge spiral up to the sky, 65 feet tall by I think 250 feet wide, and then that all is consumed on Sunday night. So it's the crossroads. Burning Man is the crossroads of um, spirituality, technology, new ideas in social living. It's a party. Everybody thinks about it as a party because it is a party.
mhm,
That's definitely there. It's clothing optional. It's highly sexual. It's a place where congressmen come. members of the World Bank. I think in 2019 we had 52 U.S. mayors who were touring the city with the U.S. Conference of Mayors, because the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Burning Man have a special alliance together. Burning Man has done a lot of consulting around art with different U.S. cities, and so we had 52 U.S. mayors checking the place out so that they could bring the lessons from Burning Man back to their communities. So that's what Burning Man is in a nutshell. It's almost impossible to explain. You need to Google Burning Man. You're going to come up with all kinds of crazy stuff,
Mm,
and there's lots and lots of stuff out there on it. Some of it is misinformation, not misinformation. Some of it is just, we tend to gravitate to the sensational, and
correct.
sometimes we go over the edge. So, an example, in 2017, I was way out in the deep playa out in the desert, and I got amazingly, my phone dinged because there's no self-service out there, at least not much. And I had a buddy who'd sent me a link to an article that said that 70,000 people, because that year we had 70,000 people, 70,000 naked people in the desert having an orgy. And I'm looking around going, really? Really? I'm here. Where are they? And yes, it is highly sexual. There's an orgy
Mm,
dome, and
mhm,
there's nudity because it's clothing optional.
mhm,
It's the world just hyper intensified in one
mm,
space for 1 week.
yeah.
It's your neighbors and your family just living out what they truly believe,
Mhm.
which is why you're not afraid of it. It's just, these are people who are searching.
Correct. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna share my screen real quick. That's why I kept
Yeah,
looking
yeah,
up. I
sure.
had to put it on my other monitor. And Sandra, I finally figured out how to get my mouse up there. I can't believe it. I'm so proud of myself. Okay. So share screen. So here's some pictures. And again, I don't want to, but this is so if you can see, if you want me to click on any of them, Carl, let me know. But
Yeah,
like for this one here, right? That's what you're talking about at the
yeah,
end of it all.
that's right. That's the man being burned. Now go back up.
Yeah.
Scroll back up, because there's another. There you go, along the top.
Hmm.
The second from the one that has the man that's standing on like a base. That's it. Yep. So that's 2019, and that year the theme was metamorphosis, and so the man is standing on. Uh, it's based out of the old. I'm trying to think of the author's name. Otis? No, no. Oh golly, this is terrible when it's on my tongue and I don't have it. Stink. Um, but it's based on the book Metamorphosis. This idea of man is emerging from a shell, from an egg, and the egg is wrapped up with a snake. That's the imagery that's being actually portrayed in the picture. So that's the man standing on his
Mm,
base, and everything down below, to give you a sense of perspective. That's us. That's the people. That bicycles and people. So it's a big construction. And then at the end of the week,
mm,
tens of thousands of us gather around, and it's wild. It's a party, lots of art
mhm,
cars, lots of sound, lots of fireworks, the most amazing pyrotechnic displays you'll ever see.
mhm,
And then the man burns. And when the man is done burning, and you've got this great big field of coals, and hundreds of people will march around him for hours,
mm.
and it's wild. It is ritual. It definitely is ritual. Larry Harvey, the founder of it, understood it to be ritual. So
Yeah.
It's America's Disneyland in a very hyper spiritual way.
You know what it reminds me of? What the tribulation is going to look like, less the Holy Spirit. Because you got
Mm,
to remember, we're going to be living in some, well, not, I say we, I always say that,
hmm
but the world is going to be in some very perverse times
hmm
at that point. And I just, I've never been to Burning Man, but I've known about that for, when someone showed it to me, again, long before I even started the podcast.
Right.
And my jaw was on the ground at some of the photos that I saw.
Yeah.
Like you said, clothing is optional. And I went, I don't know if it was their website or if it was something similar to that, but basically the same concept. I don't think it was Burning Man. And you'll probably know what it is. Oh my gosh. I know it's kind of like all these people coming together, rainbow, something with a rainbow, maybe
Oh,
not.
Rainbow Family.
Is that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
Yep.
they're not the same, but they
No,
are similar in some ways as far as the perversion aspect of it and the
and it
whole
comes out. It could both come out of
spirituality.
the counterculture of the '60s. Both of them have
Yeah.
those roots,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
and not just metaphorically. They have roots out of that counterculture. Uh,
Hmm.
Burning Man comes out of the culture of San Francisco. It really is San Francisco's event.
Mm. I'm not gonna lie, I mean, the artwork, like you said, is
Oh,
phenomenal. I mean, the from what
absolutely.
I saw, again, from what was shared to me, this is years ago. I feel like it was 2016, 2017, when I was even this even came to my head. So, and I know I feel like in 2020 there wasn't anything, right? Because of COVID, and I think in
Right.
2021, didn't they kind of briefly open stuff up or something like that?
2020 and 2021, they both did
Mhm.
massive virtual burns,
That.
created their own
Yep.
metaverse, so to speak, and built
Yes.
this incredible Burning Man experience, and it was incredible.
Mhm.
They did a really good job of integrating the sounds and all of it to reflect
Mm.
Burning Man, and to the creativity. Oh, incredible creativity!
Yeah.
One of the things that Burning Man has had forced me to wrestle with is the place of art within a Christian context, because we
Yeah.
don't understand art. We don't have a
Mhm.
conception of art. We rejected art, unfortunately, way back in the Reformation,
Yeah.
largely. And,
Mhm.
and there's a difference between art and decoration and crafts.
Mm.
And art is meant to ask questions, compel
Mhm.
discussion, force conversations. It introduces worldviews. And sometimes even the art form itself has a basis in a worldview. And so Burning Man's art is intentional. So often it's intentional in that it is asking you to have a discussion, to have an experience with it, and then to wrestle
Mhm.
with what this may mean. So the art, incredible creativity. That's
Yeah.
one of my positive takeaways that way, so to speak. People
Mhm.
might go, "Oh," but no, that's true. It's again that common human experience, right?
Mhm.
Burning Man also has done a fairly decent job in working through what it means to be in community. Um,
Mm.
Even now, I can go all over the U.S. and I can rub shoulders with people who have been to Burning Man. I
Mhm.
get it. I do get it. I'm one of the handful of, I don't even know if there will be a handful, maybe handful of Christian researchers who really have worked hard to try to understand that culture. There's not
Yeah.
many of us who've done this, and
Mm.
even fewer who've actually not just read about it but ventured into it.
Yeah.
So when I talk to people, I find out they're from Burning Man. There's an instant connection, like instant. Like
Mhm.
we end up having discussions.
Mhm.
And yeah, so it's been very very interesting. To me, it's been, and I've never expected it to become this. In a way, it has morphed into a ministry on its own, in a way, um, because years ago I was trying to wrestle through, okay, there is a political expression of oneism. We see that with global governance. There is this religious expression of oneism through Eastern spirituality, and then through interfaithism. There is a technical expression of oneism through transhumanism. And that was something I was wrestling with before 2010. 2010 was my first transhumanist event I went to, but it was before then already.
Mm.
But then there was something that's been bugging me, bugged me for a long time. And I knew about Burning Man already by whatever, year 2000 or maybe before. But there was a question that was just, it was in the back of my mind and I couldn't frame it. And the question was this: it has to be a cultural expression of oneness. And that's when I all of a sudden said, I need to relook at Burning Man. And then when I relooked at Burning Man, it opened up. If you just stick to Burning Man, you're missing it.
Mm.
You have to realize that Burning Man is just one of literally hundreds of events that take place around the world, some of them even
Mm.
larger, that ultimately celebrate oneness. And the term for it is transformational culture or transformational festivals or evolutionary culture. And so it can be anything from large corporate concert experiences that intentionally integrate an experience where you are no longer just an observer, but you are a participant in that you interact with it all. Tomorrowland out of Belgium, prime
Mm.
example. It has its own mythos, even. So it integrates you into that mythology. Now you feel your global oneness connection in a cultural context. And Burning Man does the same thing, just in a different way. And there's like I said, literally hundreds of events like this. Uh,
Yeah.
in fact, I mapped out. I had a Google Map project. I started in 2013. I stopped it in, when did I stop it? 2016, halfway through the year. And I had mapped out in Canada and the US alone 265 transformational festivals and transformational events, small ones from a few hundred people to large ones with over 80 and 90,000 people. Um, and I still had another 50 to vet, another 50 or so to add to my mapping project. And by mid
Wow.
2016, I was just like, I'm done. Points made. Points
Mm.
made. It's here.
Wow.
It's it's not fringe,
Mm.
not at all.
Yeah.
It is the culture. It is the world. It's
Mhm.
And these events are considered to be a liminal zone. A temporary autonomous zone is the language. And so, in a temporary autonomous zone, you are now living what the future should be, what it could be, and you transgress the norms of your mundane life, and you
Mm.
go in. You experience this as a container that will
Mhm.
psychologically, spiritually, and socially shake you up, and
Mm.
then you are spit out back into the world, and it is changing. It does have a transformative quality because it has been such a radical departure from your norm,
Mm.
and then you spread that out. And I absolutely agree, it does have that transformational effect. It is
Yeah.
psychologically powerful. So there is a cultural expression of oneism.
Mm.
It's there, and it's global. that's
Absolutely.
that's why
Mm.
you have things like even regional burns. Israel has a regional burn. And so
Mhm.
they build a massive effigy of Adam and Eve
Mm.
in the Negev desert, and they burn it there. So that's
Mm.
what Burning Man is, and as you can see, it opens up like huge amounts of other things. Um,
Yeah.
so hey, listen, when something like Burning Man, which started off as a countercultural kind of arts and whimsical psycho-magical movement in the 1980s in San Francisco, when it now and it was this in 2018 or 2019, I can't remember which year, when the Smithsonian Institute opened up their entire Renwick gallery to display Burning Man culture. You know it's mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah, when
That
they
is
did that.
true.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's big.
that's big then.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow.
I don't think they've ever done that for like LDS, the Mormons. I don't think they've ever
Right.
done that for the Jehovah Witnesses.
Mhm.
All of our traditional counterculture or counter
Mm.
cult, ministry focus has always been on these pseudo Christian cults that are there, and they're still important. Absolutely, don't get me wrong, but I think sometimes we've missed the fact that there's already a bigger culture out there, and it's spiritual but
Yeah.
not religious.
Mhm.
It's
Absolutely.
secular, but at the same time, it views itself as sacred.
Mhm.
Now, how do we jump into
Mm.
that and bridge that with conversations that point to Jesus Christ?
Yeah.
That's the big question. How are we going to do
Mhm.
Act 17 in a new pagan world?
Yeah, that is a challenge.
Hmm.
And
And the
that's why
biggest,
God's using people such as yourself
well,
and the small
yeah,
few who are involved.
and the thing,
Whether it's spoken or not, there's still
right,
seeds, I think, planted,
yeah.
you know?
And Kim,
So,
conversations like this, as people listen in, hopefully it
mhm.
will you get their juices going too to see now how can I be an ambassador right in my neighborhood? Because look, you don't have to go to
Yeah.
Burning Man. You don't have to go to these events. You don't. Um, here's a little clue about where your ministry is. Wherever your feet are, that
Mhm.
is where your ministry is.
Amen.
Flat out. That's
I
it.
love that. I think I'm gonna steal that. I'm
Oh,
just letting you
do
know
it.
I'm
Yes.
plagiarizing you
Awesome.
right now.
Perfect.
All right, so let's bring this in for a landing. Like I said, I
Yeah,
could
yeah.
just sit here and I looked at the time and it didn't even
Oh
feel
my.
like we've been here for over 3 hours now, but seriously, this has been the most engaging because it's my world, it's my wheelhouse. I not that I like it in that way, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
just cuz
I do. I get
I'm
that.
interested because spirituality is such a deception. It really is. And so I don't think there's any other questions, right? Sandra, can you give me a thumbs up, thumbs down? I can see you in the screen below. Oh, okay.
Demons and long hair.
So let me read the question because I keep forgetting I have a podcast. So it says, is there
Okay.
a correlation with demons and long hair? Nazi occultists around Hitler dealt with these witches with crazy long hair who were supposedly fortune tellers. Oh, wow. That's deep, Dawn.
Yeah, I don't think so. I
Wow.
don't know. I mean, if we look at biblical examples, I look at Samson who had long hair. But that
Mm,
was quite the opposite, wasn't it? It was a mark of his position with God.
mm,
So I don't know. I don't think that there is a correlation. I don't think that there's a legit. Let me put it this way. I don't think there's a legitimate correlation. There may be correlations where, let's say, culturally and maybe a spiritual culturally, and I think this could be alluded to with the Nazis, where there may be some type of this is the setting that we now work with, and we say, hey, long hair equates with this. We do that, but I don't I can't no there's no biblical correlation that I can see, and that's really
mm.
the litmus test. Is there a biblical correlation that says long hair is demonic? I don't see that anywhere.
Wow, great questions, guys, tonight. Seriously, Dawn, that was phenomenal. I like people who think out of the box
Yeah,
a little bit. My friend Mo, she's like, she'll just think of questions, and I'm like, how did you even think of that? So, according to Sandra, so guys, I just want y'all to give Sandra some love. She's done an amazing job here tonight on this platform. I can see her down below. So, thank you so much, Sandra. You are absolutely amazing. One day we'll bring you on if you want to come on now and say hi. That's great. But that way you guys can see her and she can say hello. Um, Amazing. Like I said, not only is she my best friend, but she is just a mother of four. And to take this time out, heart full of gratitude. So, but Carl, what I would love for you to do is just end us out in a word of prayer, brother. And
absolutely can.
because I don't know where. I always pray over this podcast. I'm not very big, but God still
Yeah,
uses people. So whether I have 2 views or 2,000 views, I just always ask that God would expand this podcast to those who need to hear it. So I'm going to
right.
leave this to you and then we'll close for the night. So thank you guys for hanging in. I appreciate it. So go ahead and
Wow.
close us
Yeah,
out in prayer.
and for anybody that actually stuck through the almost 3.5 hours, oh wow, you deserve like a medal or a trophy or something.
I know,
Uh,
right?
that's
Wait, hold
wild.
on. Hold on. Oh, I can do something here. So hold on. I can do this here. Um, how about that one? Did you guys hear the applause? Is that good? I gave him a whole bunch of applause. Okay. I'm done playing around.
Well, let's pray. Let's
Yes.
pray.
Let's pray.
Lord
Mm,
Jesus, we come before you, and we are grateful that you are the King of Kings, and that there's nothing that surprises you. There's nothing that throws you off. That you are our solid rock, and that you are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and that you're trustworthy. And Lord, as the world around us becomes increasingly more chaotic, as we ourselves live lives where there's always drama and problems, and where we struggle, all of us struggle in different ways, Lord, we still look to you. You are our Savior. You are our hope. You are our Redeemer. It's not in man. It's not in our systems. It's not in our institutions. Lord, we just ask that you would give us strength as we face our day. Lord, we ask that you would give us courage as we are to be your ambassadors. We give you thanks for this time that we could spend here on this platform. And my prayer, Lord, is that you will now empower us, not just simply with head knowledge, but also with the understanding that we are to be your ambassadors here, and
mhm.
that at a heart level and at a head level, we can engage with those around us as ambassadors for you, Jesus. We
Yes.
pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. So I'm going to say goodbye, but don't physically leave. I'll
Okay.
end the broadcast. I don't know if it'll cut you off. I don't think it will. But anyway, everyone, thank you so much again, like Carl said, for sticking out here for this duration. It's definitely been a long podcast, but so engaging. Absolutely. So as I always end it, until next time, if I see you here, there, or in the air, and we'll go ahead and close it out with the video somewhere right here. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. To find out more information, go to lifeclipspodcast.com. Would you like to be a guest on our show? Do you have questions, comments, or concerns? Send an email to questions@lifeclipspodcast.com. Until next time, family, I will see you here, there, or in the air.
Titus chapter 2, verse 13, looking for the blessed hope and the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior, Christ Jesus.